The city of Neverwinter suffers under the Wailing Death, an oppressive plague spread by the mysterious Cult of the Eye. But have no fear, 4 magical water Davian creatures hold the key to a cure. All we have to do is hope they don't get stolen before the cure is made. But wouldn't you know it, the water Davian creatures have been stolen before the cure is made. So it's up to Brother Hammerbane, cleric of St. Cavil, and his trusty sidekick, the summoned direwolf, Sir Fluffles, to get them back and save the city. Neverwinter Nights is a Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game released back in 1991 and could be considered one of the precursors to modern MMORPGs, not to be confused with the identically titled but totally different Neverwinter Nights, which is a Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game released in 2002. That one is a 3D BioWare game, following on from their success with Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. It's the one that everyone thinks of when you say Neverwinter Nights, and it's the one we're playing today. It released to extremely favourable reviews and sits at 91% today on Metacritic, one of the highest rated RPGs. It would go on to see 2 expansion packs, Shadows of Udrentide and Hordes of the Underdark, both releasing in 2003, and then 5 premium modules, which were slightly smaller expansions using the same game engine, releasing all the way up until 2006. It would then see a sequel in Neverwinter Nights 2, and that getting 3 expansion packs. But the true brilliance of Neverwinter Nights isn't in the single-player experience, but its Dungeon Master creation toolkit and the online hosting of these adventures, allowing players to create their own campaigns and then let their friends run through them online, with the Dungeon Master controlling the enemies live. And it's a testament to the quality of this system that games are still being made and hosted and played. Indeed, Neverwinter Nights still has multiple persistent online role-playing worlds with consistent player bases run by and for the players of the game. Now, I'm a massive video game, RPG, and Dungeons & Dragons fan, so you'd assume I have a lot of opinions about Neverwinter Nights. Well, I need to be honest with you, and the biggest shock of this video might be a simple truth. Hi, I'm Josh Strife-Hayes, and I have never played Neverwinter Nights. Please put your pitchforks down and let me explain. Okay, I played it once when I was a kid, many years ago, and I remember nothing about this game except getting to some goblin-filled caves about 7 or 8 hours in and being so bored that I quit. Now, I know how important people say this game is, in both the video game and Dungeons & Dragons landscape. I've been told all about the amazing multiplayer adventures people have made, but I have no knowledge of this myself. So I figured it's time to change that. This means I'm going into Neverwinter Nights with no nostalgia, no childhood love for the game, if anything the opposite, childhood boredom, no previous game knowledge or skill clouding my vision. I'm going to complete the entire base campaign, The Wailing Death, and do every quest I find along the way, look into all the mechanics and see if it still holds up today. And then I'll finally know, for myself, Neverwinter Nights, was it actually any good? 2 quick warnings. This game does feature giant spiders, and I am going to spoil the entire plot of Neverwinter Nights 1, so only watch if you're okay with both those things. This is a long video, so grab a cup of tea, settle in, and thank these lovely people for supporting me on Patreon and allowing me to keep making long-form stuff like this. More information on how you can join them at the end, but for now, let's begin. But which version do we begin with? Because you've got the base CD game, but then also the Diamond Edition, which came bundled with both expansions and 3 of the premium modules. And then we got the Enhanced Edition, in the same vein as the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 Enhanced Edition made by Beamdog, the same people. And this version contains the complete Diamond Edition, plus a few graphical updates and general stability patches for more modern systems. For this video, I'll be playing the Enhanced Edition. There was some drama back when this released, as it didn't have complete compatibility with some of the already created player-made modules using Diamond Edition, but I'll touch on that later. And while this video isn't sponsored, I do want to give a big thank you to Good Old Games for supplying me with this game. Thank you, GOG. So I'll start by playing the base game campaign, The Wailing Death, which is a short tutorial and then 4 chapters of gameplay. If I enjoy it, I'll play the expansions and maybe try some of the multiplayer stuff. The game uses the D&D 3rd edition rule set, so we'll be seeing some quirks of that along the way. Character creation. Oh man, I love late 90s, early noughties fantasy art. Now, I'm likely going to be soloing the game, so I'll need a class which can deal decent damage but also have self-healing, so we're going to go with Cleric. You assign your ability points to your 6 main attributes, just like Baldur's Gate, but unlike that, you don't have the endless re-rolling, you just get told how many points you have to assign. Now, I'm not going to use a meta build guide, so seasoned veteran Neverwinter Nights players are probably screaming at all the mistakes I'm about to make, but I'm having fun. And the game doesn't skimp on the customization. It's even got some pre-made spell and ability selections for new players to use as a crutch, but I want to go full control. clerics get 2 domain specializations. I'm going to go war and healing to be a melee beast battle tank, and hey look, there's even physics when you spin the model. The shirt swooshes around. Now these 3D models were actually a major selling point at the time. BioWare had made Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 both exceptionally highly praised isometric games, and the jump to 3D is always a big risk. Sometimes it's a make or break moment in franchise design. I guess we'll see how it did. We give our character a voice. Options include Dumb Hero,
Don't just stand there! Crack some heads!
or Pious Scholar.
By my will, attack!
I like the personality touches these have.
To your weapons!
I think I'll go with boisterous and good-natured, and we are done. Meet Brother Hammerbane, Warhammer-wielding battle cleric, here to dispense justice in the name of his deity, Saint Cavil. So with sturdy hammer in our hand and faith in our heart, cue the opening cinematic. So the city isn't doing too great. A plague known as the Wailing Death is spreading, not to be confused with the Beckoning Death seen in the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves film. You can tell them apart because that one beckons while this one wails. But luckily, Neverwinter has recently received delivery of 4 magical water Davian creatures, which contain all the bits needed to make a cure for the plague. They are under the protection of Arabeth de Tilmarand, a legendary paladin, so everything should be fine. We start in the Academy, and this is essentially a long playable tutorial which you can choose to skip. It covers all the major playstyles of all the major classes, and in a really cool touch, you only need to play the tutorial for your class, but you can play the tutorial bits for the other classes. The trainers will even say to you, this isn't for you, but you can still try it just to get a feel for how it works. You can click to move with left click or use WASD. I'll be using click to move. And spinning the camera makes any foreground scenery fade out in a circle so you can always see your character. That's a nice touch. Talk to NPCs by clicking, open chests, open doors, pretty standard stuff. The inventory is grid-based with items having both size and weight, so we're limited in both how much we can carry and how much we can carry. The UI is fine. Optional minimap, which you can add your own pins and text to for notes, a compass. We seem to start with some gear already, so I put it on, and the character equip screen is nice and cleanly labelled. Now, most interactions, from NPCs to enemies to items to even your own character model, is done by right-clicking and bringing up the radial menu. And this is important. The radial menu has every possible option that you could do with that thing. Examine, interact, use, attack, steal, cast spell, command your summons or party members. It's all context sensitive based on where you're clicking and when you're clicking, but it's all here. Now, clicking an option can sometimes open further menus. It's deep, but you get used to it pretty quickly. It does have issues, as we'll see later, but in general, it's really nice, smooth design. Your journal has 3 main tabs. The quest you're on, complete with detailed recaps of what you're meant to be doing, quest you've already done, and then notes that you can make yourself. There are no quest markers on the map, either to collect new quests or to hand in current quests, so reading and remembering is really important. Thankfully, because of how the game is designed, even if you do miss a side quest, it will not affect the main story. The character sheet has all the basic info you made at the start and will also show all of the passive buff or spell effects that you are under. And the settings menu is great, allowing easy rescaling of both the game and the UI. So far, structurally, this is really well made. Leave our room at the Academy and we are greeted by Pavel, and hang on, I know that voice.
I was afraid you were going to sleep all day. I guess the instructors work you pretty hard here at the Academy.
That is Cam Clark. Cam has voiced roughly 4 trillion video game characters. He's Liquid Snake. He's the singing voice of Simba in The Lion King 2. He's He-Man. He's Darby in JoJo, Dritz in Baldur's Gate, Hercules in God of War 2, and the voice of Dr. Mobius in Fallout New Vegas, Old World Blues. The man is everywhere, and once you notice him voicing a character, you'll see him pop up in this game repeatedly. Pavel tells us that both he and his brother Bim were invited to the Academy by Lady Arabeth personally, so they're quite important. We chat to Bim and he explains radial menus and basic combat, asking us to attack him. Combat, just like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, is real-time with pause. The game is counting the time between the game rounds and giving you actions when your speed in that thing would allow you to have an action. For example, the amount of attacks you get uses your base attack bonus. The higher, the more attacks you get per round of combat. We'll look at ways of raising this later because it can get absurd, like 10 attacks per round absurd. Now, super important note, for the original campaign only, that's the one we're playing here, combat encounters are scaled to the player. Meaning if you enter an area at level 3, you'll face level 3 enemies. Go in at level 10 and you'll face either more or more difficult enemies. This means the higher level you are, the more you need to understand the strengths of your build and patch the weaknesses that you may have or play around them. The expansions did not have level scaling. Spacebar, just like Baldur's Gate, pauses the game and lets you issue orders in combat. Advanced players can use the action queue feature to set up a load of things that will happen in order when they are able to happen. Dungeon masters can use this for monsters too. But the early parts of the game don't need you to use this at all. Pausing and using a potion or changing your attack target, that's pretty much all you'll need to do. You've also got the hotbar at the bottom of the screen with a second accessed by holding shift and the third accessed by holding control. You can add potions, spells or abilities here using the radial menu. And once you've been in a fight, used a few spells or lost some health, you'll want to rest to recover all of that. Unlike Baldur's Gate camping needing you to take a whole night, resting in Neverwinter just means sitting down for 10 seconds plus an extra half second per level of your character. A little progress bar pops up and you'll recover all your health and spells with certain effects, both negative and positive, wearing off. So you'll no longer be poisoned, but you'll also lose any summoned creatures. Bim sends us onwards to learn about shops, which are nice and simple. Merchant inventory, your inventory. My main issue so far is there's no way to directly compare an item you're wearing with an item you're considering buying. Now thankfully the numbers we're dealing with are pretty small, double digits at most, so it's very easy to understand, but it also means an increase of 1 or 2 defense can really matter in fights. One issue shops do highlight is how you cannot move the windows in the game around. If multiple windows are open at once, there is a preset order for which ones go where, and they can force others out of the way. A quick Google and yeah, you can't move the UI much beyond what the game wants you to have. Sell some of my starting stuff, buy a large shield and a warhammer, and I mean, we're basically done. This weapon combo cannot be beaten. I mean, technically you should be using a scimitar because then you get critical hits on both 19 and 20, but warhammer, big chunk of metal on the end of a stick. That's like the pinnacle of weapon design right there. Talk to more instructors, including one who gives you a quest to read the journal, and the journal says, well done, you've passed, which I quite like. The combat instructor teaches us how to activate our special attack, Parry. And, I mean, that is completely pointless because time spent parrying is time spent not hitting things. And then I learned the greatest of all the combat abilities. You can attack chests and doors. So it doesn't matter if you can't pick locks or find keys. You don't need to. You can smash most things open to get at the sweet treasury goodness within. Now, as we'll see later, some things cannot be broken easily, but they can still be broken. Everyone loved Baldur's Gate 3 letting you attack doors. Neverwinter Nights was doing it 23 years ago. Being a war domain cleric also means I have a special power, calling upon the blessing of St. Cavil himself, which gives me a decent boost to my melee stats, accuracy, strength, and defense for about 5 turns. Use this in tougher fights. I'm not a ranger, but the game does let me do the ranger tutorial, equip a crossbow, grab some bolts, and shoot. Now, range is remarkably weak in Neverwinter Nights 1, especially for a solo character, but I love that the game still lets you try. This is the freedom that I admire in RPGs. They explain that you shouldn't, but they don't actually stop you. Ferdinand then lets us into the Menagerie, a collection of extremely tough monsters just here to scare new players. Thankfully, they're locked away. At least, I assume they're locked. I try the gate and yeah, they're locked. Now, if you right-click an enemy and choose Examine, you won't be given their exact level or health values. Instead, you'll see a challenge rating, and this is a Dungeons & Dragons description thing and relates to that creature's level compared to yours, ranging from effortless, meaning 6 levels lower, to impossible, meaning 5 levels higher. Bear in mind, we will need to fight and beat impossible rated enemies even with level scaling in this playthrough, and we'll need to do it solo. Well, sort of solo. On to spells. Yes, spell slots and resting. Okay, for non-D&D players, I'll try to simplify this. In Neverwinter Nights, you learn spells in different ways. Clerics gain a load of new spells on leveling up. Wizards can choose a few to learn as they level up, but then use single-use spell scrolls to scribe into their spellbook and use them again. Now, Brother Hammerbane has no time for reading in battle, relying on the blunt force of hammer and memorized words of faith. But it's not enough to just know a spell. You must have it memorized and assigned to a spell slot, and then have rested so the spell slot is available. Let's say you've got some cantrips, that's essentially a level 0 spell, and you have cantrip spell slots, then some level 1 spell slots, level 2, level 3, and so on. You open your spellbook and choose which spell you know is going to fill that spell slot for today. If you want to be able to cast Cure Minor Wounds multiple times, you'll need to take up multiple spell slots of that level. When you use a spell in the game, that slot is used up. To refill your slots, just rest. You can change around what's assigned freely whenever you're out of combat. So assigning spells to a spell slot and then resting is essentially guessing what you're most likely to need for the next bit. The Sorcerer class, however, doesn't have spell slots and has no need to prepare spells ahead of time. The trade-off is they can't cast as many throughout the day. The main issue here is needing to rest to recover the spell slots, because you cannot rest near enemies and the game counts the combat training dummy as an enemy, so I'm running all the way back to the start just to have a little sit down. This will be happening a lot. The rogue training sounds cool, so I try to open a door and get stabbed by some hidden spikes, so I swear a lifelong grudge against doors and will be smashing down as many as I can. Brother Hammerbane cannot abide the sneaky cowardice of rogues or people with keys. Cleric training is more like it. Use our healing magic to heal an injured dude by the wall. Remember, you can heal your own teammates or summoned pets, and then test our AoE Turn Undead spell, which releases a burst of holy energy and causes nearby undead to flee in fear, or if we have twice as many levels as they have hit dice, they will instantly die. Hit dice are a D&D thing we'll discuss when we level up. Mandatory training done, leave the academy and meet Lady Arabeth de Tilmarand.
Congratulations, your training here at the academy is now complete.
Arabeth is a half-elf paladin of Tyr, the god of justice. She's an all-round shining light of hope and personal friend of Nasha Alagondar, the current ruler of Neverwinter. Okay, it's time to use the water Davian creatures to cure the wailing death and save the city. Everything seems great, but then halfway through the ceremony, oh no, enemy mages teleport in and attack everyone. Everything is not great. We join the guards and repel the invasion, but Arabeth believes this was not random. It was a targeted attack to steal the creatures. With Arabeth believing the unknown enemy is likely using her magical signature as a location marker and teleporting to her, she stays behind as a distraction, and we are sent to check on the rest of the academy to see if it is safe, which it absolutely is not. And I hope you spoke to all the trainers, because they are now all dead. Running back, we're attacked by goblins and some unknown assailants. But I'm a cleric, so I can magically empower my own weapon. But doing this in combat is dangerous, because casting spells in combat or disengaging from melee combat will give the enemy a guaranteed attack of opportunity. And this needs to be understood for the game and all those calculations you're seeing in the chat box to make sense. So refill your cup of tea, because it's time for a quick D&D combat lesson for anyone unfamiliar. Strap in, it's about to get nerdy. Neverwinter Nights is not just a game, but a construction toolkit to make Dungeons & Dragons experiences, so we need to understand the fundamentals of constructing a Dungeons & Dragons adventure. Dungeons & Dragons uses this nifty thing, a 20-sided dice, shortened to D20. If anything in the game has a chance of happening, such as successfully disarming a trap, or hitting an enemy, or not getting poisoned, that thing will have a difficulty check, or DC. This is where you as a player roll a d20, and if your roll is equal to or higher than the DC of the thing, you win, and the thing you want to have happen happens. For example, if a door is barred and you try to break it down, that may have a DC of 10. So you roll a d20, and if you roll 10 or more, you succeed. The door is broken down, the adventure continues. But let's talk combat. Each creature, including the player, has an armor class, or AC. Higher is better. This is how difficult you are to hit in combat. Now, from a roleplay perspective, it could be argued that a failed attack against you could still hit you, but your armor did its job and protected you. However, for the sake of simplicity and mechanics, we will refer to all failed attack rolls as misses. When you attempt to hit an enemy, first you will make an attack roll. If the enemy has an armor class of, say, 11, you must roll an 11 or higher on the d20 to hit them. Remember, with 20 sides, that means you'll be hitting about 50% of the time. But we can improve your roll in 3 specific ways: your weapon skill, your currently active passive buffs, and using inherently better weapons. Let's have a look how. Let's say you're really good with a specific weapon, like a hammer, and you take a skill which gives you +2 to hit with hammers. Your attack roll is now a d20 plus your weapon skill bonus, in this case +2, because you are good with that weapon. But what if you cast a spell on yourself, like you gain +1 to hit for the next 5 turns on any attack? Well, now your attack roll is a d20 plus your weapon skill plus the passive buffs that apply to every attack. But what if the weapon itself is also magically blessed or enchanted to be super accurate? Like, this weapon gives the bearer +1 to hit. well, that can add bonuses too. But enemies can have things which give you negative attack modifiers, like the enemy being magically shielded or blurred or just really fast. So when you see something like this in the text box, that is an attack roll, and it is the result of rolling a 20-sided dice, plus all the other stuff like your weapon specialty skill, passive accuracy buffs or bonuses, minus whatever the enemy has making them harder to hit, and then if that total roll is equal to or greater than the target's armor class, the attack will land, and you will then move on to the damage roll. Just be aware, if that d20 roll was a 1, we call it a natural 1, or critical fail, and it will always fail regardless of modifiers. Even if the actual total is above the enemy's armor class, a 1 is always a failure. The opposite is true for the d20 rolling a natural 20. That's a critical hit and will always hit, even if the enemy's armor class is higher than your total roll. A natural 20 is a critical success. Now, rolling 20 on the d20 is not only a critical hit, but also does bonus damage, based on the weapon you're using. And one of the reasons that scimitars are so damn good in this game is because they count a roll of 18, 19, or 20 all as critical hits with bonus damage. How much damage you do when you successfully hit something depends on the weapon. Examining a weapon will show you which dice it will roll for its damage roll. Small weapons like daggers use smaller dice like d4. Larger ones like heavy flails use a d10. Great swords use 2 d6. So larger weapons attack slower but have greater maximum hits. And if the enemy has a damage absorption spell, where smaller amounts of damage are ignored entirely, large amounts of damage are needed to overpower that. Now, there are more modifiers based on your 6 primary stats, those things we put points into in character creation, but we only have several hours of video left and we can't get distracted just explaining all the D&D rules. Just be aware that weapon size matters here, because a creature can wield a weapon the same size as it in one hand, but a larger weapon will require 2 hands. So a medium-sized human can hold a medium sword in one hand and a shield in the other. But if they want to use a large sword, they'll need 2 hands. A small-sized halfling would need 2 hands to wield a medium sword, and they can't use large weapons at all. So when you're engaged in melee combat with something, you'll keep making attack rolls back and forth and hit each other as often as your attack speed allows, with each successful hit making a damage roll. But if you attempt to cast a spell while you're in combat, you'll give the enemy an attack of opportunity, basically an immediate instant attack roll, and if they hit you, you'll then need to make a concentration check. The difficulty of this concentration check is 10 plus whatever level the spell is you're trying to cast, plus the damage you've taken. If you fail that check, the spell will fail as well. Attempting to disengage from combat and run away will also give any nearby enemy an attack of opportunity, and you'll sometimes get it against enemies when they run past you. So melee combat's kind of risky. Committing to a big group fight means you're going to be there for a while, because if you try and leave, you'll immediately take lots of attacks against you. Now, you might think that sounds quite in-depth, or dare I say accurate, to D&D 3rd edition. Well, that's because it is. Remember, Neverwinter Nights was always meant to be a framework that players created their own games within, and the fact it's still being used 23 years later to do that shows they clearly made something players and dungeon masters really like. So now you know what you're seeing when combat happens. Back to the academy. I've got a spell which increases my hit chance by 1 and my armor class by 1, but I need to remember to cast them before going into combat. Just be aware that until you've gained a few more spells or powerful items, early game combat, especially on melee characters, feels very slow. Dungeons & Dragons has always had an issue where early game combat is a tad too simple and too slow with too few choices, and ultra late game combat is far too fast and overpowered with a few objectively correct choices. Gary Gygax, one of the creators of Dungeons & Dragons, said when him and his friends played, once they were killing gods and nothing was a challenge, they would retire the characters and start fresh, as the early game struggle and simplicity had a unique joy to it. Smaller stakes, overcome with fewer abilities, can sometimes feel more rewarding than giant world-ending stakes. It keeps the personal touch. I've always found the same. Mid-level characters and campaigns offer the most flexibility in builds and choice, while also being balanced enough to stay challenging. And we'll start to see Neverwinter Nights hit that around levels 7 to 10. Dead enemies or broken treasure chests can drop loot bags, but these bags don't appear straight away. They instead slowly fade in, and they can be quite hard to spot against the also brown floor. Unfortunately, Pavel's brother Bim is dead, so with this floor clear, we push into the dungeons, finding an Amulet of Will, a magical passive buff. I won't mention every item I find, but I will mention any major upgrades to the build. So let's talk about loot, because this is one of the major differences between the Neverwinter Nights games and the Baldur's Gate games. In Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, loot is preset. You always know what an enemy will drop or what a chest will contain. You always know where to find the rare magical items. You can effectively root the game. However, in Neverwinter Nights 1, loot is randomly rolled from a table of all possible loot, and this table updates along with your level. So if you want a chance of finding that level 19 Hammer of Thunderbolts, you need to be level 19, but it could be found anywhere once you are level 19. The higher level you are, the more gold you'll find and the better quality potions. The problem with this system is the massive table of potential loot that you could get covers every class and every item, even if you can't use them. Now, there is a slight weighting advantage toward weapon or armor types that you have put points into. So if you've pushed into being better at the longsword, you are slightly more likely to find a longsword weapon if a weapon would be rolled, but it's not guaranteed. And dungeons aren't repeatable. You can't grind the boss and open the chest again. Once you've looted something, that's it. That's the item you're playing the game with. So if you spend an hour crawling through a dungeon, taking down a big boss and opening a treasure chest to get something you can't use, that's effectively an hour wasted. The issue with this system, though, is how easy it is to exploit, because big treasure chests after bosses or at the end of long dungeons are always going to contain something good, but the loot isn't generated until you open the chest. So you can quick save before opening a chest, then open it, and if you don't like what you got, just keep reloading your save and reopening until you get the thing you want. So while what they were trying to do was remove the stale and predictable loot of Baldur's Gate, what they did was create a situation in single-player mode where you essentially reload until you get the thing you need anyway. Obviously, this doesn't work as well in multiplayer mode or persistent online worlds because you can't reload to before you open something unless every player agrees to do that. Now, in my playthrough, I used this system once or twice just to see how effective it is, but ultimately, it really kills the flow of gameplay, so I try to use it as little as possible. Eventually we find Pavel. He's alive, and he asks to join your team to avenge his brother. And that's a really nice narrative justification for introducing a mechanical system, partying. So party members. In Neverwinter Nights, you can only have one humanoid companion, or henchman, with you. Now, with the right build, you can have up to 6 additional things involving exploiting summoned creatures or familiars, but for most normal players, it will be you and a helper. Now, you don't need to micromanage them. Indeed, you actually can't tell them to do super specific things. Unlike Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, where you're effectively in charge of ordering them to do anything, in Neverwinter Nights, they've got their own basic AI and will fight a bit differently. They'll also take the initiative, and if you fail to open a door or chest, they'll start attacking it with you, which I like. The game is really designed to be played with other human players, up to a group of 4, but the NPC companions do a fine job of filling in the gaps. Having a henchman with you sometimes offers a unique quest, such as finding items related to their backstory, but unlike the character-focused storylines of Baldur's Gate 1, 2, and 3, Neverwinter Nights was much more focused on combat, mechanical freedom, and player choice. So taking a companion is more about covering a mechanical weakness, less about unlocking a brand new narrative. The main storyline won't change, and all the companion quests are optional. But the important question, can you romance the NPCs? In a word, no. In more words, there are additional dialogues which can open up with Arabeth if you're male and Aringend if you're female, and the Arabeth plotline does have a small effect on the plot, but nothing game-changing. So sorry guys, no Astarion Halcyon /fix here. Just be aware that having henchmen with you, or summoned animals, does lower the experience you receive from combat. You'll receive 20% less for each companion you have, and that stacks, but it's multiplicative and not additive. So if you have 5 companions, you will actually receive about 51% of the experience that you would have gained if you were playing solo. Now, Brother Hammerbane is not one for sharing, but Pavel has lost his brother, and Hammerbane is absolutely one for vengeance, so Pavel can stay. Before we leave the academy, we meet Gelder, who teaches us the final lesson, how to level up. I throw another level onto Cleric, gain a few new spells, and some more hit points. Every time you level up, you will roll the hit dice and gain that many more hit points. You'll always gain a minimum of 1 hit point, but potentially you could gain a lot more. Now, in the future, I might multi-class, putting my level into another thing, but for now, pure godly cleric-y goodness. We explore around before leaving and find an unidentified glove. Some items in Dungeons & Dragons are magical, but unidentified. It used to be that you could equip stuff even if you didn't know what it did, risking maybe equipping something cursed and detrimental. If your lore skill is high enough, just examining an item will reveal what it is. If it's not, you'll need to pay a shopkeeper a small amount of gold to identify stuff. We find a big badass shield I'll drop my starter armor, and now we are talking. Also, throw the shortbow away. Rangers for cowards. And you'll realize that most of this game is inventory management. One of my issues so far is the pathfinding is not good. It can't deal with corners or multiple rooms, and you'll often get stuck on objects or walls. You need to manually guide it, mostly in straight lines. Reach the central room and take on a mysterious mage. The fight is brutal, and I am taken to 1 health, but somehow I survive. Unfortunately, Pavel does not. And it seems there's no way to revive him. So rip Pavel, your sacrifice kept me alive. Bim would be proud. You can go and hang out with him now. Actually, Pavel dying might be a good thing because we can now loot his half-plate armor. Every cloud and all that. Fight into a stable and we spot 2 of the water Davian creatures we need. A Yuan-Ti and a Dryad. But there's another fight happening and they flee before we can grab them. And when that fight is done, we meet 2 key characters. Fenthic Moss and Destha. Fenthic is a rather timid, nervous, naive elven cleric of Tyr, and he's dating Arabeth, so I guess nice guys actually pull badass paladin ladies. Fenthic is working under Destha Indolane, a Helmite priest who is convinced the Wailing Death can't be cured by these magical creatures, and instead should be dealt with by blessing the people and everyone just having a bit more faith. Fenthic explains the assault to steal the Water Davian creatures was unsuccessful. However, the creatures themselves have fled into the city. So we're going to regroup at the Temple of Justice in the Neverwinter city centre and begin hunting them down. Ending the prologue and starting chapter 1. The city is in trouble. The plague is bad, and if the people find out that Arabeth was unable to protect the Water Davian creatures and therefore them, mass panic may spread. So we're tasked with going to get them back. You'll notice in most conversations you can give a polite, neutral, aggressive, or situation-specific response, which is mostly for role-playing purposes and won't really affect the plot. You can make certain NPCs like or dislike you, and raise or lower the prices within certain shops based on your overall disposition, but you won't play a different storyline. And as badass as Brother Hammerbane may see himself, I just can't bring myself to hurt an NPC's feelings, so we are doing a very polite run. We're also given a Stone of Recall, which will return us to this temple at any time, meaning we can heal and use the shop and then pay a small fee to be sent back to wherever we were, similar to the portal back and forth system in Diablo. And this works because Neverwinter Nights is mostly set up as hub cities and then adventure zones around them. We're told our mission is twofold. First, find the Water Davian creatures. We're looking for a Cockatrice, an Intellect Devourer, a Yuan-Ti, and a Dryad. And while we'd prefer them alive, dead will also work. Second, find out who attacked the Academy and why. With this, we leave the temple into the city core. Now, Neverwinter Nights is not open world. It's a series of small to mid-sized maps connected by travel points, with each map having points of interest and each chapter having several main quest objectives, and then side quests which can span multiple maps. As you advance through the chapters, you cannot return to previous maps. For example, this is the city core of Chapter 1. You've got some shops and some taverns, and around the edge, 4 exits, leading to the Beggar's Nest, the Peninsula District, the Docks, and Blacklake. 4 creatures to find, 4 wings of the city. You see where this is going. When you leave the temple, you're immediately approached by Bethany. She's from the Peninsula District and says there's been a crazy prison break. The streets are flooded with violent criminals and she's worried about her family, begging us to go and help. And I love this. Not the violent criminals everywhere, that sounds horrible, but the narrative hook instantly given to the player. You are not forced to go to the Peninsula District first, but it is a suggestion, and newer players, like me, are going to take that hook and head on over. Let's go make the streets safe again, dispensing hammery justice in the name of St. Cavil. Now, I really love the scope of your involvement. You don't start overwhelmed by a whole world. You start in an academy with a simple linear path, and now you're in a city with a simple branching path. It's slowly growing in complexity, and I feel prepared for it. In the Peninsula, the Gate Captain Kip says the jail warden, for some reason, has gone mad and set all the prisoners free, and we should probably go and investigate this. You'll also notice our map now has fog of war, and local NPC guards join in fights, which is nice, adds to the feeling of a city trying to defend itself. This chest is locked, but that's not a problem, we can just hit it. But oh no, it is a problem. Some objects can only be damaged by magical or enhanced weapons. That's when you've got extra elemental damage or a +1/+2 damage bonus. If you don't have any of those, it will simply say weapon weapon ineffective, so my basic hammer has no effect here. And some other objects, even if you can damage them, will have a threshold that you need to hit before they start to take damage. They effectively absorb certain lower amounts of damage per hit, and this never runs out. For example, reinforced chests will absorb 5 physical damage per hit, meaning even if you are successful at hitting, but roll 5 or below for the damage roll, you'll do nothing. So only the damage above 5 is counted toward destroying the chest. You can head inside a few of the houses as well. Now, these buildings aren't marked on your map as points of interest, so you'll have to explore. Most are empty. A few have enemies, and a special few will start quests or hide powerful items, so it does pay to explore. You'll sometimes find local citizens asking for help, like being escorted back to the guards, and doing these kind of tasks gives gold and experience, but importantly, a warm, fuzzy feeling that you're doing good deeds, and sometimes you'll gain reputation, either good or bad points, making the locals like or dislike you. And local reputation can affect which quests are available to you and how much merchants charge you. But now I spot an issue with the radial inventory menu. It has no background graphic, meaning if you right-click on an item in your inventory, the radial menu will just overlap it, and it can look messy because everything is in focus, especially if you're trying to navigate this fast or you're clicking 3 or 4 radial menus deep. This means the UI is so far the weakest part of the game, when you combine the radial menu graphical clutter with the inability to move the windows manually. Fight through the streets and the combat is decently balanced. This gang leader is the first challenging fight, and I'm having to use potions. Thankfully, I seem to have just enough, meaning the game has given me all the stuff I need to survive this, providing I've been paying attention. And I like how this pyre of plague victims says if I had a torch I could burn it, so I equip a torch and yeah, you can then burn it, giving more experience. A lovely bit of narrative and mechanical world building combining. Inventory full, try out the Stone of Recall, and thankfully Erebeth is also a shop. Now helmets seem useful. The design is just aesthetic, so I grab the one I like the most, stock up on potions and get back out there, and I've got to say I'm liking this a lot so far. Simple to understand mechanics, yet I can see the complexity is just around the corner. A multi-choice driving narrative goal with freedom to explore but not overwhelm. Now that gang leader was guarding an entrance to the sewers, and the main prison door is locked, so maybe I can sneak in from the sewers. Well, I try, but it's mostly just enemies. And I like how you can see your concentration successes pop up in little text when you're attacked while casting a spell. It's nice to see the immediate feedback of a success as well as a failure. It makes me feel like putting points into increasing my concentration was worthwhile. And this is a small thing, but I really appreciate the animation matching in combat, because it means the enemy model or the player model is graphically responding to the roll that the other has made. If an attack misses, you'll see the defender dodge out the way, or bring a shield up to defend, or even block using their own weapon. And if an attack hits and connects, you'll see the connection and hear a lovely bone crack sound. And this small touch gives the fight weight. It's not just two models cycling through their own attack animations and taking damage until one of them dies, it's actually models reacting to the success or the failure rolls of the other. So I kill everything and find a prison key, head inside the prison, and here we find the jailer's diary on a bookshelf. He mentions feeling strange since visiting his cousin, Lady Tanglebrook. Now this is actually an alternate route hint. You can enter the Tanglebrook estate on the north of the Peninsula map and find secret tunnels which lead into the prison, skipping a lot of combat. But Brother Hammerbane is not one for skipping a lot of combat. We're doing this the old-fashioned way, surrounded by enemies and wildly swinging a warhammer. Now you might think that being surrounded by enemies is quite dangerous, but look at their attack rolls. They are getting +0 as a modifier, and my armor class is 21, meaning they're only hitting me on natural rolls of 20. That's 5% chance. I can survive that. The danger here is the gang leader, who's getting a +7 modifier to his hit roll. That's huge. That means they're hitting me on a roll of 14 or more, closer to 25% accuracy, so I'm focusing on killing them first. But even Brother Hammerbane sometimes bites off more than he can hammer, and I die. Now when you die, you've got two choices. Reload your last save, or respawn at the temple, and respawning incurs a penalty of 50 experience per level and 10% of your carried gold. This penalty for dying is mostly meant for multiplayer games where you can't just reload your last save without every other player agreeing to it. It's not too punishing. Experience and gold can be gained pretty quickly. It's just annoying enough to make you want to avoid dying, but it won't destroy your progress if you do. The game even ties this into the narrative, saying the priest has cast a recall spell on you, which will activate just before you actually die, but the drain of the spell saps your experience, and his fee for casting it is 10% of your gold. I like when mechanics have narrative reasons. And if you do ask to be sent back instantly to where you died, the priest even warns you whatever killed you is likely still there, so maybe try going somewhere else first. Get stronger and then come back. And this again is something I really like, because while Bethany encouraged us to go to the peninsula first, Death has now encouraged us to go somewhere else. So I guess it's time to explore. And now a strange glitch. The base campaign does not have mounts, but future modules do. They're governed by a special hidden item called PC Properties, standing for Player Character. This item was retroactively added to the base game. Now the player isn't meant to be able to access this item, but dying has put it in my inventory. You can't drop it or sell it or equip it, and it's taking up a 2x2 slot in the inventory. A few forums list a few solutions to removing it or resetting it, but I'm going to deal with this the same way I deal with all of my issues. I'm going to put it out of sight and hope it just kind of goes away. Back in the city core, I check out the Trade of Blades, a henchman recruiting ground. The base game has 6 available henchmen, from big burly warriors to tank all of the melee damage to thieves to open all of the locked chests. I won't be running with any of them this time, and after asking questions around the main city, Jerome says he wants to return to working at the docks, but it's been overrun by thieves and pirates, and a successful persuade skill check later, we're allowed into the docks. The docks are controlled by the Blood Sailors, a not-so-friendly but also not hostile group of pirates. I explore around and find this noble estate. They've even got a guard. We're not allowed in. But I ask the guard, "What would you do if I did break in?" And he replies, "Nothing." He really doesn't care enough to fight me, and if we are strong enough to break the door down, he'd probably lose anyway. Which is a lovely touch. It's reminding the player they can attack the door, and showing that NPCs aren't all stupid. Now this highlights the brilliance of our mission. I have no reason to go into this specific estate, but I've been tasked with finding the Waterdavian creatures to save the city from the plague, and in that task those creatures could be anywhere. So I can justify going anywhere. I really admire how you've been given a mission important enough that any type of character can justify breaking in. I'm doing it for the greater good to find a cure, but you might be using it as an excuse to go and rob people, but we are both being driven in the same direction. So I go into this room, meet a load of guards, and die. So I try again, but this time I fully buff up and I win, proving the most important skill in Neverwinter Nights is preparation, and using everything you have to tip the odds in your favor. It is a tactical RPG, not an action game. A guard even uses a health potion, which I love because it means the enemies are beholden to the same rules that I am. Take on a crag cat, kill it, feel pretty damn powerful right now. Then I open a chest, take 61 damage and die instantly. Stay humble, or the game will humble you. New levels means new spells, and the game has over 200 spells, and while caster classes start pretty weak, they also end up as godlike walking nukes, but nothing, absolutely nothing is more powerful than the power of enemy positioning using doorways. Enemy models cannot pass through each other, or through the player. This does mean they can surround you and trap you. But it also means if you can force them into a straight line and funnel them through a corridor, you can fight anything one at a time. I find the master of the manor and he asks if the mistress of the Moonstone Mask sent us. He has a major problem with her and gives us a key to all the locked chests and asks us to leave him alone. So of course we loot his house and find a statue of Afala, the Moonstone Mask owner. That's a tavern in the city. And while she didn't send us here, this is a plot hook. So we go and have a word with her. It seems she is an art collector and would pay us to acquire certain items, liberating them from their current owners. But this highlights another RPG writing issue. One of the items she wants is the statue that I've just found and have on me right now. But the game doesn't recognize that. Neverwinter Nights doesn't understand if you do quest objectives out of order. It doesn't change the dialogue options if you already have key items on you for conversations that you're not meant to know about. You have to accept the quest as normal and then just instantly talk to her again and hand it in. You can't say things like, "Oh, I've already got that," or "Oh, they're already dead." There are 2 more treasures that she wants, and they're both in the Blacklake District, and she's paying quite handsomely for these, so I guess this is an excuse to go there now. We learn that the Blacklake District is actually mostly okay, but it's only okay because there's a dangerous no man's land between the nice parts of the district and the city core, and no one is getting in or out. And because of this, a half-orc called Luxor has taken over the divide, and the plague victims walk freely there. So we fight inside, which goes fine until a plague victim hits me and I get diseased. And this brings up another issue. What does disease do? I can see the icon to the top right, and I can see the disease status on my character sheet, but if I cursor over either of these, there's no tooltip or explanation. This is the kind of thing that you're expected to read the manual for, because that does list everything. But purely from a gameplay point of view, I wish there was more information available in-game about the status and effects that you can be placed under. Turns out there are actually loads of diseases, and if you fail a save roll against them, they will incubate and damage your ability scores. But thankfully, I'm just so damn hardy, it goes away on its own. Inside this damaged tower, we find Luxor the half-orc, bandit leader of this destroyed land. So we fight and, he wins by a country mile. Right, this is going to be tough. So I buff up, and I try again, and I lose. So I leave. And, oh, cool, enemies can follow you out of buildings. Good to know. So I run away a lot and use every healing spell I have, and this guy is brutal. I just can't win this toe-to-toe. He's getting more than twice as many attacks as I get. He's hitting often and hitting harder. He's even getting a plus 14 to hit bonus. But then I discover the power of cheese. Enemies can follow you in and out of buildings and caves on their map, correct, but they can't follow you from map to map. So I can lure this mini-boss to the gate and then return to the city core. Here I can rest up, fully recover, buff back up, and head back in, and enemy health does not recover. So by moving back and forth between maps, resting, buffing, and getting just 1 or 2 hits in per time, I am slowly but surely able to grind him down. Now this fight does make me realize I need to increase my damage output pretty substantially. Maybe my hammer just isn't big enough. Now after nearly 25 minutes of map hopping, I am finally able to kill him. He drops a shield, his head, and a piece of adamantite, which will matter later. I let the locals know that Luxor is dead, get the shield identified, and even try a two-handed flail to see if it helps my DPS, and it does not, because two-handed weapons are considered a bit of a noob trap. They are worse than either dual wielding or doing a weapon and shield combo, because you'll be hit much more often. With Blacklake No Man's Land clear, I can visit Blacklake itself, and locals say Mad Wizard Meldon has been acting suspiciously lately, sealed up in his manor. And Formosa, this protester, tells us that Meldon has a stash of valuable artifacts and food that he hoards for himself. And if we liberated this stuff, we could feed this part of the city and fight back against crime. She also offers us 500 gold to kill him. And I mean, I've got no hate for the wizard, but 500 gold is 500 gold. Now, I like how the game has given you 2 different NPCs with different motivations, both pointing you toward this area and Meldon the wizard. You know how people praised Fallout New Vegas for having multiple quest hooks which all ultimately get you to that cool plant vault? Neverwinter Nights does that too. Oh, there's the Hodge Estate. That was another place the Moonstone Mask Mistress wanted us to rob, so in we go. If the first mansion was about a few high-powered fights favoring single target fighters, this mansion is just all traps. Everything is trapped. The chests, the doors, and the floors. It's one giant trap, and this is where rogues can shine. And these traps aren't weak. I tank 44 damage in one hit. I'm resting after every trap. This is the mansion which teaches you to quick save. But I find the urn and leave. Into the third and final estate, which is close by. This one is more combat focused with many weaker enemies, which would be perfect for an AoE focused wizard, meaning the 3 mansions you're encouraged to rob early in the game actually encourage 3 different playstyles. That is an excellent hidden tutorial. When you find the mansion owner, he won't fight you, but he will stand there and watch helplessly as you smash all his chests. Hand all this stolen stuff to Afala and she pays handsomely. Right, back to hunting the mad wizard, but not so fast. This child has heard strange noises coming from the secret basement in their house, behind a bookshelf, and is scared. Now, Brother Hammerbane cannot let a child live in fear, so we investigate. The mother says the bookcase opens with a secret passcode. The code is Halueth. Remember this, it will be relevant later. So we head down and find lots of skeletons. Finally, a place I can turn undead. Now this is a design which happens a lot. You'll be on your way to do something and suddenly a distraction will pop up, a side quest. Neverwinter Nights has a lot of content, and you'll always have a direction or an objective, and following them is often worth it because most stories will wind together, even if not directly. They'll take you to locations where other plot hooks happen, or you'll find NPCs you're looking for by looking for something else. It's not that the stories intertwined with another story, it's that they happen in locations where other stories also happen. Now here's a lovely moment where environmental storytelling and mechanics combine. This chest is described as having scorch marks on it, and you'll notice there are burn marks on the floor, so I'm expecting a fire trap. But that's okay, because I've leveled up and know protection from elemental damage. I cast this on myself, buff up my defense, open the trap, and tank the fire damage. That's good game design right there. Enough clues to suggest a course of action and then a reward for making good choices based on those clues. Now, there's also a strange door down here, which I can't open and can't break. But there's a chest next to it with a cryptic note. The note just says, "A splinter in flight." I don't know what that means, so I'll come back here if something hints at a solution. Back in Blacklake, a patron asks us to find his friend Samuel, who went missing recently, but there's no leads. And a bartender says, no, we can't go in the secret back room without a pass from the Trade of Blades. So obviously I head back to the Trade of Blades, talk to everyone until Grax agrees to sell me a gauntlet pass, and then go back to see what this is all about. So the gauntlet, it's a little secret pit fighting arena. Take on increasingly tough opponents, and if you beat everyone, you win the entire bar. That's pretty cool. So we give it a go, and I get slaughtered. Right, I need some serious prep. And this is where you'll start to understand how the game works, because if you don't, you simply can't win this. For me, that means elemental damage. Hrusk, my opponent, is hitting me with a flaming axe, and the physical damage isn't an issue, but the magical fire damage is, so if you can't beat them, join them. Being a cleric, I can imbue my weapon with fire, and if I hit an enemy, I'll do extra fire damage, but that extra damage is often substantially more than the physical damage of my hammer itself. This, combined with defensive spells, takes down Hrusk. And the second fight is substantially easier. They attack way faster but have lower to hit bonus, so they're missing a lot. Easy for my build. But for the next fight, I wonder how my Summon Animal Companion spell works. So I play around with a bit and I summon a direwolf. The fight starts and, oh my god, this direwolf is an absolute beast. It tanks, it spanks, it is the goodest of boys. My faith in Lord Cavil has been rewarded with Sir Fluffles. He is never leaving my side. I win the fight, level up, and actually dual class into fighter, because I need some more hammer skills and fighters can ultimately get extra attacks. Now, the gauntlet is actually an entirely optional section, but I'm really glad I forced myself through it because it forced me to explore my skills and find different ways to overcome fights. It highlighted my weaknesses and made me patch them, and I feel much more capable for doing it. And the gold income from owning the bar gets me just enough gold to buy a cloak of protection, and now we're looking like a real adventurer. Back to hunting the Mad Wizard. His mansion is guarded, but it turns out you can just explain to the guard that you're working for Arabeth and demand they open the gate. Inside, I also discover that while certain chests are immune to physical damage, if my hammer is enchanted with fire, the flame damage will still go through, meaning I can now break any chest or door down. We convince Gromit the guard we are meant to be here, and he just lets us into the wizard's house. Then we fight down into the dungeons and find Samuel, the missing guy from the bar. We send him home and fight deeper in. By now, I've discovered the direwolf summon is so powerful, I am just its pocket healer. This is now the adventure of Sir Fluffles, featuring Brother Hammerbane. Oh, finally, a magical bag container featuring extra bag slots and a weight-reducing spell. I can carry extra loot. Down here I find some dragon's blood. I'm unsure of its purpose, but it sounds valuable. And then I spot an imprisoned dryad, one of the Waterdavian creatures. It seems Mad Wizard Meldon found her wandering around, became rather infatuated with her, and imprisoned her. But then the wizard shows up to stop us, but a quick application of hammer to the face shuts him up. We explain the plague cure plan to the dryad, and she gives us a lock of her hair, which should be enough. She then teleports away using the single tree which for some reason is growing down here. So I return to the temple to let Arabeth know I've found one of the creatures, but on my way back, 4 hidden enemies suddenly appear and jump me. I fight them off, but then find a letter on one of them, explaining, I have been seen working to cure the plague and I must be stopped. So that was a triggered event based on my past actions. That's nice. I even stopped by Formosa in the square on the way back, the protesting girl, to claim my wizard hunting bounty. And then I show the assassination letter to Arabeth. She warns us that helping her has now involved us in whatever events are unfolding, and we are too deep to leave now. With my newfound power, I return to the Peninsula District where the prison break was, but I explore around a bit first, and I find a strange tomb underground. A dwarven guard says only adventurers working under the authority of Judge Olaf are allowed down here. Well, that's okay, the judge is back in the temple, so I just go and ask nicely and he gives me a permission slip. He explains several ancient artifacts of the late Lord Nasher are hidden around here. If we find them, bring them to him. He'll pay well. So back in the tomb, I find a logbook, and it explains how these artifacts are all hidden behind magically locked doors. The only way to open them is to place a specific item inside a nearby chest, and how every nearby chest will have a riddle explaining which item it needs. And we find an arrow, a shield, and a sword. And the logbook mentions a code word. Halua. Hang on, a riddle door, a splinter in flight, that's an arrow. So I return to Blacklake, to the secret bookcase, to the locked door, and place the arrow inside the chest, and yes, it opens the door. Okay, we buff up before going in, because this could be a challenging fight, and how right I was. This is one of the hardest fights in all of Chapter 1. Going into the tomb, you will be attacked by 4 flaming swords of Never, animated flying swords. Now, one of these would be a tough fight. 4 is basically impossible. Well, it would be impossible for a normal, fair adventurer, but Sir Fluffles and Brother Hammerbane have the power of faith, steel, and doors on their side. So with an excessive amount of jumping back and forth, resting, healing, and chipping away at the swords ever so slightly, I can just about survive. This is a higher level side quest designed to be done just before finishing the chapter, or with 3 friends. Inside this tomb, we find Lord Never's armor. Now, you can equip it, but it's not great, so I hand it back to the judge for a reward. Return to the Peninsula and to the prison riots. Fight deeper into the prison, into the pit, the deepest, darkest floor. Sir Fluffles is carrying this run, and eventually we defeat a high-ranking prisoner who explains the lead jailer just went mad. Something ate his brain and made him release all of the inmates. In the deepest room, we find the jailer. His body is an empty husk, infected with an intellect devourer, one of the creatures we need. So we attack, and when you kill him, the devourer appears and runs off to burrow into another guard's brain and use that body instead. So this is a mini-boss where you're chasing the devourer from host to host, and only when all hosts are dead will it remain out in the open. And it's a long fight, but eventually we kill it and take its brainstem. I also find a magical warhammer. Fantastic. Return to Arabeth, hand in the devourer brainstem. 2 down, 2 to go. Let Bethany know the peninsula is safe now, and then explore the main city a bit more. I even find the weapon shop, the Shining Knight, and inside I meet Marok, a specialist smith. He explains if we bring him a magical weapon, meaning any weapon with a +1 or higher modifier, and a unique reagent, he can make us some seriously strong stuff. He even gives us a book with all the recipes in. Now, remember those random items mini-bosses kept dropping, like adamantite or raw materials like dragon's blood? This is where they matter, because loot drops in Neverwinter are random, but those special reagents, they're always consistent. So I put my Warhammer +1 and the adamantite the half-orc bandit dropped earlier, pay 500 gold and get a rune hammer, which increases my resistance to enemy magic. There are some seriously powerful things you can make at this forge, meaning you can leave Chapter 1 pretty armored up. Now, I've not been to the Beggar's Nest yet, so let's see what's going on over there. The local guard explains the place is overrun with zombies from the Great Graveyard, but no one can get in because the main graveyard gate is barricaded. And also Walters, the newest guard, is missing. I like how you have both a general quest of find the creatures, but also get given area-specific quests like stop the zombies. Now this is my kind of area because Turn Undead is just ripping through hordes of zombies. We investigate a local house and meet Jermaine. He mentions the zombies seem to avoid a weird house to the north. Also his brother Torren is missing. Let us know if we find him. We'll recognize him by a unique family ring. The building to the north denies us entrance unless we have the Mark of the Serpent, which we don't, so we search on. A trail of undead takes us into this warehouse filled with dual karma-wielding shielded zombies. We even take down a necromancer and they scream, "No, her power must reach him." I don't know who her is, but we do find the missing guard Walters, and we keep going deeper and reach the crypts beneath the Beggar's Nest. This place is both trapped and infested with spiders. Now, I don't like spiders at the best of times, so the giant ones are especially annoying. And the crypt leads us into the Great Graveyard, and here we find another cryptic hint, a wall at arm's length. Well, surely that's a shield. It is, and in here, we fight a mummy. You'll notice by now that I'm also attacking faster. That's because my fighter levels have increased my base attack bonus. But you'll also notice my first attack within a turn gets +10 to hit, and my second attack gets +5. The more attacks you get per round, the less modifier each subsequent attack has. The artifact down here was a book. I'll return that to the judge later. For now, we go into the Warrens of the Damned, and a mind-controlled zombie starts talking to me in a female voice. Maybe this is the her the necromancer spoke of. We do unfortunately find the body of Torren, the missing brother. He's dead. We take down a zombie lord and some animated armor guarding its previous lives' treasure. Deep in the crypts, we find Gulnan, an evil Yuan-Ti sorceress. She is mind-controlling the dead to protect herself. Unfortunately for her, she is one of the water Davian creatures we need. So now we fight. She is tough, but Sir Fluffles is tougher, and we take her still beating heart from her body. And I love how this plot has some moral ambiguity to it. Yeah, we are curing a plague, but do we have the right to kill a sentient, intelligent creature who wants to survive, even if their death would save thousands? That's a question for the scholars. Brother Hammerbane is a cleric. He has a hammer, therefore every problem is a nail. We hand the brother's ring back because it's the right thing to do, and in a nice touch, if you head to the local tavern, they thank you for removing all the zombies. This leaves only the Docks district to explore. Local chatter says there's a black market auction happening in a seedy blood sailor-controlled bar. Blood Captain Vengor apparently has something very valuable to sell, something someone with the plague will definitely want to buy. Now, if you didn't talk to the locals and discover this, you'll find a note on the body of any mugger in the area, revealing the auction. The note also acts as an area map, filling in your minimap. This is another lovely use of multiple plot hooks for the same endpoint. And now more plot. Another letter found on a masked attacker reveals a cult called the People of the Eye. They are responsible for the assault on the Academy, and it seems they're trying to delay the creation of a cure for whatever reason. This Cult of the Eye is extremely important. In fact, it's so important, it's literally the symbol of the game. I'll give this letter to Arabeth when I'm back at the temple. I head into the smuggler's den listed on the map, and then we get into a drinking contest with a blood sailor. And even though we lose, they respect us trying, and we learn about the auction. Whoever is running it is deeper in the pirate base, but a chef guards the door and asks for the password. I ask if he really cares enough about his job to try and stop us, and he says no, he does not. Go right in. Now, if you're close to a trap, it might show up highlighted in red. You can attempt to disarm traps. If you fail, you'll still take the damage. If successful, great, you'll reach the sweet treasure beyond. Just be aware you won't spot every trap every time. Eventually, we meet Dara Nay, a blood sailor who knows the auction is actually cancelled. They explain that Captain Vengor found a cockatrice and only wanted to hold the auction to force Lord Nasher, the current ruler of Neverwinter, to personally appear and admit he had failed to protect the city. It seems Vengor and Nasher have some sort of personal grudge going on, but once Vengor realised Nasher was staying put and we were looking for it, he ran to the aqueducts, taking the cockatrice with him. Dara Nay understands the importance of curing the plague and so gives us an amulet to unlock the Silver Sails Trading Company stockhouse and explains there's a secret entrance to the aqueducts in there and we should give chase. So we head across the city and find the trading company. Unfortunately, the trading house is infested with fire beetles, sword spiders, and bloated dire spiders, and this proves to be quite a challenging fight, but I've specced so much into defense, very little can hit me, and Sir Fluffles is hungry for flesh. Into the aqueducts, survive some poison-spitting beetles, and eventually find the captain. He's arguing with a rogue faction of pirates. I don't have time for this, so I just kill everyone, and when you confront the captain, he just gives you the cockatrice and runs off. The only thing he wanted was Nasher to say that he was better, and he didn't get that, so he flees. Not the glorious fight I was hoping for, but the final creature has been found. Also, while you're in the aqueducts, we can find the final secret riddle door. The sword opens this one, and we find the final artifact, and the judge pays us handsomely. We hand in all the Waterdavian creatures to Arabeth and head into the ritual chamber. So with confident Arabeth, timid Fenthic, and shady Destha all taking their positions ready to perform the curing ritual, we have just enough time to have a quick chat with Fenthic, and he lets something slip. It seems he gave Destha the magical countercodes for all of the safety wards around the Academy and Castle Never. Destha said he needed to draw more magical energy for this to work, and Fenthic believed him. The defensive wards would have prevented the assault. Fenthic, what have you done? The ritual begins. The cure is created, and then Destha reveals his treachery. Whatever Destha is, he is not a priest of Helm. False Helmites reveal themselves and attack us. Destha steals the completed cure and flees through a portal he creates, followed by Fenthic. Was Fenthic working with Destha all along? Is he an evil mastermind? Or is he just a fool caught up in this mad plan? Arabeth springs into action. She uses her magic to hold open Destha's escape portal and asks us to follow. Give chase. Find her love, Fenthic. Punish Destha and recover the cure. So make sure you've finished up all your business in the city and jump on through the portal. We end up outside on an open road passing through a wood. Brother Hammerbane and Sir Fluffles on the hunt for a mad priest. We chat to some locals and they actually say good things about Old Man Destha. They refuse to believe our accusations and they will not help us find him. So we go on the search. We find a local cave, and inside, a fanatical underling of Destha attacks us, so we're on the right track. Deeper in this cave, we meet Johnny, a scared child. Him and his father own the warehouse above, and recently it was taken over by a cult posing as priests of Helm. Johnny says they killed all the real priests and began raising them as ghouls. Johnny is also Chapter 1's final shop and sells the powered-up versions of every weapon you could have found so far, but he also sells a bag of holding, which both holds items and negates the weight of any item within it, which is super useful. We fight through the warehouse, filled with zombies, meet Yari the Knife, an insane prisoner who talks some nonsense about the old gods and some creator race. He says, "She will kill us all." Look, you're not the first person to tell me a magical, mysterious she is going to kill me, mate, and I dealt with the last one. I'm sure I'll deal with this one too. Whoever she is. Into the Temple of False Helmites, kill them all, and find a book explaining how to purify a Temple of Helm if it were ever taken over by evil. Now, this book is actually for a subquest, which I missed, but you do get a cool bow if you kill a demon and do the quest. Deeper in the temple, we find Fenthic Moss, the idiot who trusted Destha, who gave him the magical keys needed to facilitate the attack, to steal the Waterdavian creatures, and Fenthic not only blames himself for this, but is also convinced, through some mad delusion, that if he could convince Destha to return to Neverwinter and bring the cure to be in the right, that would justify Fenthic trusting him, absolving him of guilt. Fenthic is so in denial about what he has helped happen that he is grasping at any straw to be the good guy here. We tell Fenthic he needs to return to Arabeth, to return to Neverwinter, but he can't bring himself to face Arabeth again. His guilt and shame over his misplaced trust of Destha and the damage it did runs too deep. You can choose to kill Fenthic here, but that's not our justice to dispense. We choose to send him back to Neverwinter to face trial. Deeper in the temple, you finally confront Destha. Inside an undead summoning ritual, we disrupt the ritual and attack. Now, Destha is an incredibly hard fight. He can unsummon my direwolf. He has far more hit points than anything I've faced before and does a lot of damage in melee. I actually don't know how I can win this. You can't leave the arena by the entrance door. A strange force will stop you. And you can't rest. In the end, I need to trap him in a room by closing a door and getting his pathfinding stuck, which means I can take just enough distance to get a rest, recover my spells, and grind this fight to a close. Now, when you win, you don't actually kill him. He gives up willingly, saying his job was to spread the wailing death for the Cult of the Eye. But once he realized his part was done, the Cult of the Eye had no need for him, and without the support of the cult, he knows he's going to be killed by them as well. To this end, he fled to Helm's Temple and raised the undead army around himself as his own personal protection. But seeing he is beaten, he gives in and willingly comes with you. But Destha still has a sick sense of humor and refuses to answer any of your questions. He won't reveal who he's working for, where the Wailing Death Plague started, who the Cult of the Eye are, or even the ultimate goal of the whole project. He won't give you the satisfaction of knowing. But with this, we take Destha and Fenthic back to Neverwinter to face trial.
Destha's punishment was brutal, but his death brought little satisfaction. The horrors of the Wailing Death could not be undone with his execution. Those that had suffered now turned on each other. They looked for someone to blame, and found it in Destha's closest friend, Fenthic. The letter of the law found him negligent, and he was hanged as a sacrifice to appease the bloodthirsty mob. If any thought the sentence unjust, they remained silent. Duty required all to act as one. It was not the time for divided loyalties. The cult behind Destha's treachery still had to be found.
That is harsh. Destha being burned is brutal but understandable, but Fenthic was a naive man. He wasn't evil. But Arabeth still had to watch her love be hanged until dead just because of his association, just to appease the bloodlust of the citizens of this broken city. So with the cure gone and Neverwinter falling deeper into the grip of the Wailing Death, Arabeth's righteous fury turns toward hunting the Cult of the Eye down, and she wants our help. We begin our hunt in Port Last. The spymaster Aaron Gend says there have been rumours of many cults locally, but if we can find 2 corroborating rumours of this eye symbol, we'll know exactly where to look. Now, the start of Chapter 2 has all the mercenary companions of Chapter 1 all back and ready to go, so if you found one you like, just employ them again. For Brother Hammerbane, Sir Fluffles is the most loyal minion a cleric could ask for. Aaron tells us of 4 locations nearby we should check: the road to Luskan, the Neverwinter Wood, the southern road and the caves on it, and then the port town. So you might notice this is constructed in a rather similar way to the first chapter. You have a safe base map with shops and some NPCs who need quests doing, and then several connecting maps all accessed from the corners of the safe map, with each connecting map having a main plot connection and a few self-contained quests. And when you leave the starting building, a farmer's son runs up to you and says, his mum has been kidnapped by ogres on the North Road. You should go there. So mechanically, it's pretty much exactly the same as Bethany asking you to go to the Peninsula District. And this is where most people quit the game. Because there is no denying it, Chapter 2 doesn't have the charm of Chapter 1. It's longer, has grindier combat, and doesn't seem to have the intricately fleshed out, relatively interconnected city, but it does still expect you to do mechanically the same things. I started feeling this about 5 hours into this chapter, so I did some asking around, and yeah, people generally agree Chapter 2 is repetitive, grindy, and the moment that if you don't love Neverwinter Nights, you will quit. Now, I'm enjoying the story enough. That's kind of keeping me going right now. I want to know what the cult wants, because mechanically, it's gonna start to get a bit samey. I head to the Northern Road first, chat to the farmer who says, yep, wife's been kidnapped, please help. So I go and explore the local caves and find approximately 1 billion goblins. I fight them all, then fight an actual direwolf, which is nowhere near as good as my direwolf, and then we meet goblin shamans, healers. Always kill the healers first. Eventually I meet an orc chief who is way faster and more powerful than me, so I end up running away and using the door tactic just to get some rest, sell the loot in town, and teleport back to this cave, and this is a long cave. Taking on the orc chief is a bit of a chore, but eventually a pack of bugbears accidentally burn the orc with an AoE flame breath weapon, and they end up fighting each other for a bit, which is great. I destroy an orc temple with some Minotaur guards, find an even better shield, and then find a bugbear being tortured by other bugbears. We free the bound victim, and they explain someone called the Master has been taking bugbears away from the cave for some reason, and when he questioned the Master, his fellows turned on him. This might be a lead, so we let him go free and we go deeper into the cave. We even find Leah, the missing wife, send her on her way, but this cave goes even deeper. Take down a bugbear beastmaster and level up, speccing into the Champion of Torm cleric prestige class, a holy warrior of faith and steel. I also gain what I think is a powerful ability, Lay on Hands. You can heal yourself or someone else once per day, but I say powerful and then read the maths. The amount healed is my Champion of Torm level, which is 1, multiplied by my Charisma modifier, which is 1. So let's see, I can heal myself for 1 times 1 is 1. 1 hit point once a day. Thanks, Torm. Saint Cavil gave me a wolf. You gave me a terrible spell. I trigger a huge orc assault and just about escape, surviving using the power of doors, finding an underground orc village, and then some guy called Ganon attacks me and insists she cannot be stopped. That is the second time that someone has said a magical she is incredibly powerful. So I kill Ganon and his double-headed axe-wielding wizard orc friend, then loot his journal. It says he was sent here to find an artifact, but it's not here. So hopefully the team's also sent to Charwood and the Neverwinter Wood have found it. Cool. So our main takeaway from this area is the Cult of the Eye is not here, but there might be a powerful artifact somewhere else. Thankfully, the game has a teleporter to send you back to the surface quickly from the end of the dungeon. So we check up on the farmer and his wife, they are fine, then take the eastern road to the Neverwinter Wood. Here we meet a team of archaeologists. There's a dig going on in the wood. Now these guys don't seem to be with Ganon though, because they're not attacking me on sight. Archaeologist Jax tells me they're looking for artifacts belonging to an ancient race of people called the Creators, beings who were here long before humans. Apparently the Creators fought the ancient dragons and left behind some pretty powerful stuff. However, the dig has run into some trouble. Everyone got attacked by trolls, and they'd really appreciate us going to kill all the trolls. Okay, this likely ties into my goal of find evidence of the Cult of the Eye, because ancient artifacts are definitely cult territory. The troll cave lives up to its name and contains approximately all the trolls in the world. We meet some lady called Janice who cast a shielding spell on herself but now needs help dispelling it because she can't move. She explains her son Ravat has a magical ring which can undo her spell, and he's back with the archaeologists. I then discover if you enter and leave a cave quickly, repeatedly, the game will auto-pause, be dark, and all of the enemy assets will be T-posing. I end up getting chased halfway across the map by a group of trolls, and I just about make it back to the city alive, and then I find a magical rod which allows me to become cloaked, which greatly raises my defensive rolls, and now with the power of being being part ghost, I kill everything. We find the woman's son, get the ring, and go and free her. This chapter is almost entirely fetch quests. Inside another cave, I find a note on a dead body saying they found what they were looking for at the bottom of this cave. Ooh, so we're on the right path. And I love how the troll's dodging animation is just a full-on Matrix-style lean-back. Deeper in the cave, I find Darius, a guy taken prisoner by the trolls. He explains the trolls are afraid of something down below and are attacking the archaeologists to make them stop digging. So, of course, I continue digging, and we find the Creator Ruins. This place is a combination of ancient magic and modern clockwork, with steel structures holding everything together. A giant guardian golem refuses to let us in. It says we are not a creator, or a servant of one, as we do not bear the ring of the golems. So maybe I can find that. I explore around a bit, find some animated armor, and then a Minogon, which is a metal clockwork minotaur. And I've also found a magical ring of jade, which casts a gentle green glow for about 15 meters around me, so I can now see in the dark, but everything is tinted slightly green. This is more of an old school dungeon crawling vibe, and honestly, I really like it. And in this chest, we do find a golem's signet ring. This is the mark I needed. And with this, the Guardian lets me by more enemies, including some stone statues which break open into gargoyles. And by now, I'm just assuming every chest is trapped and tanking all the damage. We head deeper into the Creator Dungeon, and now something I didn't even notice until I started looking for it. You can see the damage numbers that you're doing to enemies in numbers above them, but you can't see their health total. Instead, their description changes from uninjured to barely injured, injured, badly injured, nearly dead, and then dead. Now, not knowing the exact amount of health an enemy has left keeps you pushing until they actually die. It encourages you to still use your powerful attacks, even toward the end of a fight, because nearly dead could still mean 30 or 40 hit points remaining. Another golem blocks my passage and refuses to move until I speak the words of the master. Hopefully they've written them down somewhere. You'll also notice by now the game uses the same mechanic in the same areas repeatedly. It's very much the feeling of, now it's this bit with the mechanics. I find a cool mirror shield and then yep, there they are, the words of the master. So I slap 2 flesh golems down, then speak the magical words to the guarding golem and he moves out the way and we venture into the 3rd level of the ruins. Now the golem here doesn't have a riddle, they just instantly attack you, and after killing it, we find the body of a thief with a special key on it. We find some more books down here which expand on the history of the world, and we learn that the creators were an ancient race of powerful beings who enslaved other lesser races. But their rise to power was about 10,000 years ago, and they've not been seen since. Into the deepest part of the dungeon, and then we actually meet one of these creators. Powerful lizard-like creatures with immense magical power. We just about beat one in a fight, and then they explain they have only just returned, so are still very weak. However, they are surprised to see the humans, a race they once enslaved, subjugated, are now free and dominant. We learn the creators had a queen, and looting this book confirms it, the tale of Dread Queen Morag, a creator who killed her sister and her own mother just to gain power in the hierarchy. This may not be relevant though, but we report it all to Arabeth just the same. Creators, Dread Queen Morag, possible return. Arabeth does not care and is just intently focused on finding the people of the Eye and taking revenge for Fenthic. So instead we give the books on the creators to Jax, the archaeologist, and then follow the hints from Ganon's journal mentioning the cult in Charwood to the south. So we head to Charwood, and there's a large locked mansion just off the road. I don't know who lives here, but I'm curious, and everyone is a suspect until we have proof, and oh god, the wolves have ice breath weapons now. Now we can't get into the mansion through the main gate because it's locked, but thankfully we find a cave around the side of the mansion, and this leads to an alternate entrance through the basement. Why am I doing this? I have no leads pointing me here. Well, I'm doing it because I'm inquisitive. I'm a curious little fellow. Brother Hammerbane wants to know why your door is locked, but mostly I'm doing it because Chapter 2 is terribly paced and just kind of hopes you keep playing until you find the cult. I'm realizing now that the vague memories I have of playing this as a child, I definitely quit in this chapter because it's just so vague in what you're meant to do. So inside I discover this is Juan's tower. Who is Juan? Don't know, but until he confirms he's not with the cult, he is a suspect in my eyes. I find a ring of elemental resistance in a trapped chest, and yeah, the tanky build is really coming online now. We even find a portal which sends me to the top of the tower, and then I meet Juan, an immediately aggressive wizard. So we fight, and just before he dies, he wants to talk, maybe saying things like, "Who are you and why are you attacking me?" The problem is, his summoned minion keeps attacking me during this chat, so when the chat window finishes, I auto-attack the summoned minion, which unfortunately the game counts as attacking one himself, so I accidentally kill him. Well, nothing to be done now, best loot the place. I explore around more and find another portal to some kind of summoning chamber. There is a portal and a brazier which you can interact with, and it shows an inventory-style menu, meaning you can put stuff in it. And I have the strangest urge to throw stuff onto the flames. But what? I find even more books on the creator races and their rather brutal, uncaring, slave-loving nature. And then we meet Gulgash, a flaming imp flanked by hellhounds. He's tough, but a hammer is tougher, and when it dies, it drops its heart. So I pick it up and go back and throw it in the brazier, which closes the portal. I feel like I've just completed a quest without being on it or knowing what I should have been doing. And yes, that is the case, because my journal now reads, in his tower south of Port Last, the wizard admitted to having the gem currently sought by Eliath from the Alliance Arms Inn. Okay, but I've never been to the Alliance Arms Inn or spoken to Eliath, and the wizard didn't mention a gem. Yes, I did loot a gem, but I don't know what it does. The quest design of Chapter 2 really didn't imagine you'd ever complete them out of order, but it's also designed to give you more freedom, so it's likely you'll do that. I think this is a great example of where Neverwinter kind of falls apart when it tries to give the player complete freedom, but doesn't plan for the player using that freedom. The journal also says, apparently he left a gem in the summoning chamber, but the imp Gulgash opened up a portal, and now we've closed the portal, we should speak to Wonev for a reward, but we can't because Wonev is the wizard who is dead. The problem is the quest now cannot leave your journal until you complete the chapter because it wants you to speak to Wonev even though you can't. Quest flags are just all over the place in Chapter 2. But at least we have got one kind of out-of-order lead. I can return to the Alliance Arms Inn and ask Eliath if he has any gem problems. So I head on in, but I'm immediately approached by a guy called Solomon. He asks if we truly are the hero of Neverwinter, and I say yes, 'tis I, and he gives us a ring as a token of thanks. That seems suspicious. So Eliath, he needs 3 gems to adorn a special scepter. He knows one is with the wizard Wonev and gives us a key to get into his mansion. I mean, thanks, but a little bit too late. The other gem is with Zamathara, a warrior woman commonly found in Luskan, and the third is with Setara, a witch in the Neverwinter Wood. Remember Chapter 1's quest of the find the 3 bits of art for the lady in the Moonstone Mask? This is just that again. You even get given the quest from a tavern. Now, if you're a rogue, you're actually guaranteed to get this quest, but any other class needs to make a successful persuade roll before he gives it to you. So yes, it is incredibly derivative of the previous chapter's quests, but at least it's a reason to go places. So, the Neverwinter Wood it is. Now, the music here is gorgeous. And the sightlines are nice. This place feels magical. But we meet some druids who say things aren't so good. Turns out several druids have been kidnapped, and also the animals have gone mad because the spirit of the wood has been poisoned and is now corrupted. You know, if I had £1 for every time a fantasy adventure asked me to fix the magical essence of nature, I'd be able to pay an army to guard every forest. We are also warned of a super ugly witch who is so ugly she attacks everyone on sight because she's upset at being so goddamn ugly. I did not make that up. That is the plot. Now, this guard tells us the magical wood is off limits because the animals are dangerous, but we're like, not a problem, broski, got a big magical hammer, so he lets us in. And we are immediately attacked by a dryad, but after beating some peace into them, they explain they don't want to fight, they're just filled with unimaginable rage and can't help themselves because the forest is corrupted. So further in the forest, we find a tree nymph's home. You know, for being built inside a tree, this is a rather expansive mansion, and it seems to be filled with mind-controlled humans all attacking us to protect the mistress. And deeper in, we find a mind-controlled, half-naked male slave in the nymph's bedroom. That is environmental storytelling right there. We slap some pixies around to cast this lovely area of effect vine spell with flailing vine visuals, and then we find one of the missing druids. He explains the nymph who lives here used to be his friend, but she's acting differently since the wood spirit became corrupted. So we find the nymph in the main room, and she attempts to mind control us, and in a nice roleplay touch, you can actually lie and pretend that it succeeded. But when she realizes you are not there to kill her, she apologizes, saying she's just felt immense fear since the wood spirit became corrupted. But we can't help The spirit exists in a strange realm between life and death, and the only way to get to that realm would be to stand in a magical pool of water and stab yourself through the heart with a magical dagger. And wouldn't you know it, it just so happens she has the exact dagger we need and a book detailing the process. And looting her room, you can also find a magical mirror, which makes whoever looks into it see themselves as incredibly beautiful. Taking that might be useful later. The woods are pretty dark and I've not got dark vision or a glowy item, but I am a cleric, so I can cast continual flame on myself. That's not fire, it's just a constant glow. That's a nice mechanical spell. While the majority of the spells in the game do affect combat in some way, because combat is a big part of the original campaign, there are some spells that just do non-combat stuff. A cave with skulls and sticks on the outside. This just screams adventure. And I was right. We go inside and ettercaps and spiders galore. I check all the spider cocoons as we go, and then in the final room we fight the Spider Queen. Now I'm avoiding most of her attacks because she's got a lot of status effects like lowering resistance or ability scores. Thankfully I don't need to be smart to swing a hammer well, and with her dead we check the cocoons and find another druid. They tell us the same story about the forest spirit. Please go into the magical spirit realm by applying dagger to heart to try and save us. This is another example of lots of plot hooks for the same end goal. Journey deeper into the woods and find another cave. This is the Ugly Witch's house. She has one of the gems that Eliath wanted, so in we go. It's filled with creatures, traps, and guards. I even find a book detailing how to combine an Ettercap silk gland and a fenberry, and then cast lightning bolt on the mixture created to create a magical mass of energy. And this is a nice in-game way of letting the player know how the crafting system works. However, the crafting system is a very limited feature which requires you to be in the correct chapter, and then place specific items into specific containers and then cast specific spells on them. But these items aren't anything special. The only special things are dropped by bosses or chests after bosses, and as the game is level scaled, you'll have more gold than you can ever spend, and shops sell everything you ever need. You'll never need to use the crafting system. Deep in the Witch's House dungeon, we take down some flesh golems, then spot another missing druid. However, this door is magically locked and we need to find the key. So we explore around and finally meet the witch Satara. She's not aggressive and is also angry at the wood spirit being corrupted. She is a friend of nature, but she can't help because she's just so amazingly ugly. All she cares about is getting her beauty back. If only she had the magical beautification mirror of the forest nymph. Well, you're not gonna believe this, Satara, but guess what I've already got. We give the witch the mirror, she becomes beautiful in her own eyes and gives us the gem for Eliath and also the cell key to free the last druid. We head back to the druid camp and let them know everyone is safe, and on the way I've been picking up some items, most unidentified. One of them is a bottle. I identify it and it's a bottle of poison. Poison which could kill a magical forest spirit. Now I'm planning on trying to save the spirit, but it's good to know we've got a plan B. Right, here we are. Forest Spirit Altar. Stand in the pool, apply dagger to heart, die, and wake up in the spirit world. Now, there are a few corpses here already, so we're clearly not the first people to be here. And soon we meet the dwarf Relmar. Only one problem. Relmar has gone mad. He says that staying here too long drives people insane, but we do learn a few things. Relmar was a member of the Cult of the Eye. His group were hired to travel to this realm, poison the wood spirit, and locate a strange magical tablet, apparently a very powerful thing. But the poison didn't fully work. His group fled, but they left him trapped here. Relmar says there is an antidote for this poison nearby. He bought it in case he got poisoned himself. And then unfortunately, Relmar succumbs to madness and attacks us, so we kill him. And then we find his diary, and we learn more. It seems Relmar and his gang were hired by a mage called Morgrim, who is currently in the Arcane Brotherhood Tower in the nearby town of Luskan. It seems that Morgrim has sent multiple cult members to this area and is looking for strange magical stones of power. Now this is definitely information that Arabeth will want. I search around for a bit and find the antidote that Relmar mentioned, and then we meet the Spirit of the Wood, and there's no avoiding this, you need to fight it. There's an altar with 4 sections, and it's got some nice loot if you interact. Now at first I thought that you use the antidote by placing it onto the altar, or maybe dropping it in a pool of water, but what you actually need to do is fight the Spirit of the Forest, which has a ton of magical attacks, until it is weak enough to talk, and then offer to either cure it or kill it based on whether you have the poison or the antidote on you. Of course, we cure it. The spirit thanks us and explains that yes, the cult did find the magical, powerful stone tablet they were looking for, and yes, Morgrim is in Luskan. What exactly the tablet is and why Morgrim wanted it, we still don't know. So the spirit is saved, the forest animals are now less aggressive, and the druids know their god is good again. I catch my breath at town, quick restock, and then we head to Luskan for some answers. On the way, we pass a tavern, and I think, hey, it's always worth popping inside. So I ask around and discover there is a hidden illegal fighting ring in the basement, and we can join if we like. Okay, game, I'm not saying that Chapter 2 is mechanically identical to Chapter 1, but another optional combat test in another optional tavern. That's pretty damn similar, game. Anyway, I pay my 500 gold and go and have a go. Now, while the fighting ring in Chapter 1 was basically a tutorial for one-on-one fights, this is a dungeon crawling tutorial. You fight through multiple floors, killing a boss at the end of each one. And I'm realizing how few corridor tile sets the game has. Every inside area feels very similar. We kill a Minotaur chieftain, and then we find another fellow dungeon crawler. They're injured, and ask us to heal them. Now, this might be a trap, but I'd rather be caring and wrong than cynical and right. Helping him actually gets us information. He says the creatures in the next room hate the pillar of light in this room, and if we lure them through, they might die. Now, that is a mechanical knowledge reward. Very nice. And it's correct. Luring enemies into the pillar does seem to kill them. At the end of this dungeon, we meet Gorkan, the guy in charge of the place, connected to the tavern upstairs. And he says, we are getting far too close to beating it and gaining the treasure, so he attacks us. Why do so many people have gauntlets that they don't want you to finish? Well, with Gorkan dead, we take down a load of spiders and then reach the end. It's a riddle. It says a box with neither hinges nor key nor lid, but inside me golden treasure is hid. It's an egg. That would be the strange egg I found earlier. So I give it the egg, return to the bar and get some gold and then go and leave. But hang on, before we leave, I noticed someone in the edge of the bar. Zamathara. I know that name. A warrior woman. Ah, you had one of the gems I needed for Eliath, so we have a chat. Now this is an interesting situation, and I think this was done like the entire original campaign to show how the game editor can work. Zamathara is a proud warrior woman, but also a dominatrix. And you can demand the gem from her right here, but she'll attack you joined by her guards. Or you can flirt with her and accept her offer to head upstairs to her room. And if you do that, you can then demand the gem in the room. And she is so annoyed that she has been separated from her guards, tricked by a man no less, that she just gives you the gem. Now you can choose to fight her. She actually wants you to fight her, as this feels more honorable, but you can just say no and leave. So I return all 3 gems to Eliath at the base camp tavern, and then Solomon shows up again, the guy who gave me the ring. He says, "Haha, that was a secret tracking device, and the Cult of the Eye has been tracking you the whole time." He warns us to stop our investigation, or terrible things may happen. Okay, Solomon, but no one has tracked me. No one's turned up. So we are undeterred with our adventure and continue, and the leads all point to the mage Morgrim in Luskan. So finally, we arrive at the gates, but they are closed. Turns out the entire city is locked down to keep the plague from Neverwinter out, and no one, not even us, is allowed in. So maybe we need to find another way in. I investigate a graveyard close by, swimming in zombies, and the gravekeeper says long ago the Arcane Brotherhood, some strange mages from Luskan, built a secret lab down there, buried some books. He even says a wizard called Eltura came along looking for ancient treasure. And we can go treasure hunting as well if we like. Just pay him 200 gold for the dungeon key. So, another day, another zombie-infested tomb. Progress down here is slow because there is an absurd number of zombies and we are limited on attacks per round. Even with Sir Fluffles munching through some undead flesh, this is a slow slog. I do love this cinematic moment though, where the zombie horde actually managed to break down a gate to come and attack me. That was cool. And every pile of bones that I'm going to loot is magically getting up and attacking me, which is also quite nice. Now deep in the crypt we find Brother Torres, a skeleton necromancer raising these undead. I charge in, and the game kindly humbles me by reminding me that stun, fear, and area control spells exist. I get destroyed. I think my build's biggest weakness is I've got really low magical resistance. But here's a cool touch. In fact, a touch spell. Healing spells harm the undead. So casting Cure Serious Wounds on a zombie will cause serious wounds and rip it apart. And this is great because the Necromancer has really high physical defense and armor class, but super low magical resistance, just like me, so I heal him to death. And just in time too, because those black tentacles rising from the ground, that is a super powerful AoE spell which saps your health if you stand in it too long. With the Necromancer dead, I can loot the place, let the Gravekeeper know we've found some books, and he says, cool, someone in the port was asking about the Cult of the Eye. So I report all of this to Arabeth and Aringend, and they still won't let me into Luskan. They say we still need more evidence before we can go in. And then I discover a brilliant quality of life touch. You see, main story progression isn't based on what you know, it's based on showing certain NPCs certain items, because you need to prove what you know. So Ganon's diary mentions Luskan. I need that diary, but I dropped it a while ago to free up some inventory space, but I can't remember where I dropped it. But that's okay, the game's got you covered. Teleport back to any temple, and then look in the divining pool. Any item lost or dropped that was essential to the plot will magically show up here. You cannot lose essential items. Just one problem. Remember the dwarf Relmar, the one in the wood spirit realm who went mad? He had a diary. I read the diary, but I didn't actually take it off his corpse, so the game doesn't flag me as having it or having lost it, so I need to run all the way back and pick it up. There's just no avoiding the honest criticism. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 are all mostly fetch quests from a central hub. They're all pretty much the same mechanically, but why? BioWare can make great games. What inspired this design? Well, apparently, development was heavily hemmed in by the demands from Wizards of the Coast at the time, and the original story that BioWare wanted to do was actually scrapped by Wizards halfway into development, so they had to scramble to make something, anything, which is why the game feels so repetitive. They had to get approval to do anything, so if a mechanic was approved, it was a time-saving device to just reskin the mechanic and use it again and again and again. The problem with Neverwinter Nights is, as a creation toolkit, it's fantastic. There's so much depth, but the original campaign is padded with the same mechanic multiple times, stretched out just for that longer runtime, without showing what the editor can really do. Neverwinter Nights wanted to be an RPG like Baldur's Gate, and a hack and slash like Diablo. But the plot isn't as brutal or intriguing as Baldur's Gate 1 or 2, and is broken up by too much combat. But the combat isn't as satisfying as Diablo 2, so it exists in this kind of middle ground, doing neither as well as the games that inspired it. And the last-minute plot changes from Wizards meant it ended up being padded just to hit that runtime. Now, the story goes that Wizards was so difficult to deal with that BioWare stepped away from making any more Dungeons & Dragons games, but they took their original idea and then made their own fantasy series, one they'd be totally in control of, and that series was called Dragon Age. Grab the diary from the Dwarven cultist and bring that back to Arabeth and say, look, 2 journals from 2 Cult of the Eye members, both employed by a guy called Morgrim, both pointing to Luskan, and Arabeth says, yes, this is good information, but we still don't know where we should be looking, or who we should be looking for. Fine, Arabeth, I will find a 3rd piece of evidence. Now, in this chapter, there are actually 6 bits of evidence that you can find, and you need to find a total of 3 of them. There are 3 diaries on 3 cultists and 3 random events which end in fights, which get you the letters. Solomon, the guy that gave us the ring, was actually the start of one of those events. If he shows up for a 3rd time, we'll get his assassination letter. But for now, let's go to Charwood. We've not been there yet. And thank God I did, because Charwood is one of the best side plots in the game, because it focuses on the game's strengths. Short, snappy, self-contained stories. On the way, we meet Ingo, this local chap, and he tells us a bit about Charwood. He says it's a strange local place hidden in the woods. He says if you were to chop down every tree, they would regrow by the next day like nothing had happened. A place seemingly locked in time. So we venture into the woods and meet Quint, one of the 2 rulers of this strange village. He explains Charwood is nowhere and no when. No one comes in, no one leaves. and no one can remember how long it's been this way. Quint and his brother Karlat rule the place from a castle in the side of a mountain, but some time ago, no one can remember exactly how long, Karlat went mad, invited all the children in the village to the castle, and they've not been seen since. And since that day, time has refused to pass. That's an intriguing setup. So we head into the village and inside a building meet a strange man who is convinced that we, like the other villagers, are timeless immortal beings, and if he kills us, just like he's killed the other villagers, we'll just come back. We explain we're not from the village, we're actually looking for the cult of the eye, and he realizes that when we know about the cult, that means that information from the outside has been brought into the village, meaning we are not a villager. The guy says that he actually is a member of the cult. He was sent here by a guy called Morgrim to look for magical artifacts, and then of course he attacks us. So we kill him and take his journal, which confirms a few things. It says he was working for the Old Ones. Could this be the creator race we met earlier? And it says he can't wait to return to Luskan. Right, that is the third piece of evidence we need. We can just go back to Arabeth and leave now, but I'm kind of intrigued by this timeless village. So we explore around and have a chat with Mayor Mobley. He says everything is fine. The castle carved into the mountain protects the village and everything is fine and will be fine as long as we don't disturb the castle, because everything is fine. The mayor even says that Lord Quint took the children to the castle. He was going to read them stories and everything is fine. I say everything doesn't sound fine, so I'm going to go to the castle, and he begs me not to, and I'm sorry, Mayor, but your words are no match for Brother Hammerbane's insatiable curiosity. The gate guard to the castle can't remember how long he's been there. It was only yesterday he took this job, or was it several hundred years ago? Either way, the gate and the lock have rusted, and then he can't even remember what he's guarding. So he opens the gate and we head on into the castle. Just inside we find a riddle book and we must choose a path. The right-hand side of the castle is the path of Quinn and takes us past a horde of undead. The left is the path of Karlat and is filled with fire elementals, and the center is empty and filled with treasure. But you won't know this until you take a path. Once you've chosen, the others lock off to you, so stupidly I went fire elemental, meaning my additional fire damage is now useless. Thankfully, fire elementals, though powerful, cannot seem to figure out how doors work, so a lot of running, opening, closing, and resting later, and I brute force my way through. At the end, all three of these paths converge on a single room, and here we meet the Guardian. We are told that we are the judge. This castle was frozen in time by the god Lathander. For many years ago, a terrible crime was committed, a crime that Lathander himself is not fit to judge. We are told that mortal men committed this crime, and so a mortal man must now pass judgment. We are told to explore the castle, learn the truth, and then return to the Guardian to say what our judgment is. Oh, hell yes. I've even got a little hammer already. I am ready to judge things. The quality of this side quest shows you what Neverwinter Nights truly is, a construction kit for interesting adventures. While exploring around, you can hear the ghostly screams of children through the castle.
Please help me! Anyone! Everybody's dead!
And eventually we find Karlat's journal. It seems Karlat loved doing magical research and lamented his mortality. Think of all the research you could do if you were immortal. So Karlat's research into immortality eventually led to him contacting the demon Belial, who offered him a deal. Round up every child in the village, bring them to him, and offer them as sacrifices, and Belial would make Karlat an immortal lich, his existence protected inside a phylactery purified in the blood of youth. And in Karlat's library, we find the Tome of Summoning Belial. It even has instructions on how to summon the demon. Place the belly of a fire beetle onto the brazier, and then use the simplest of fire spells, Burning Hands. And in the connecting room, we meet Karlat. He is a lich, but insists he was tricked by Belial. He never wanted this slaughter. How can a man possibly resist demonic promises of power? He should not be judged as a man when it was a demon who did this. For you see, Karlat was disgusted by the thought of the sacrifice, but he was unable to refuse the offer of power. So he asked his brother Quint, a simple, naive, trusting young man, to go and round up every child in the village. He told Quint he was going to read to them, to teach them, to leave a legacy for the village below. Karlat then gives us his written testimony of this, saying he is not guilty, he was tricked by Belial. And then we head to the other side of the castle where Quint lived. We fight through cursed soldiers and ghouls, and eventually find an altar to Lathander, the Morning Lord, god of the dawn, of youth and of life, except the altar is defiled, covered in blood and gore. And then we find Quint's journal. It seems Quint was a devout follower of Lathander, a simple, caring man, and when his brother told him to bring all the village children to the castle so he could read to them, Quint thought, finally, my brother Karlat is softening up, becoming less focused on books and more focused on giving back to the community, to inspiring the youth. This is surely something Lathander would support, so Quint proudly rounded up all the village children and brought them to the castle. Just be aware that Quint's chamber is protected by a Bodok, an enemy that I discover has the spell Death Gaze, and if you fail a resistance check, you just instantly die. D&D 3rd edition, fun for the whole family. Inside his chambers, we meet Quint. He explains he was indeed a devout servant of the Morning Lord Lathander, and he trusted his brother Karlat with all his heart. But now, knowing what he's done, he's haunted by his past, and he is forced to watch a ghostly version of himself wander the village below, looking for any remaining children. That was the ghost we spoke to when we arrived. Quint says the moment the sacrifice ritual began, he stole the phylactery and begged Lathander to destroy it, to forgive Karlat, and to banish Belial. Quint says he knows his brother isn't an evil man. He was corrupted by a demon. Now, Lathander did hear the cries of Quint, but he was then stuck. Lathander could not destroy Belial as Karlat had made a deal, but he was also unable to punish Karlat as Quint, his faithful servant, begged him not to. So Lathander compromised. He trapped the village and the castle in time. He decreed the crime was committed by a mortal man, and a god was not fit to judge this. So only when an impartial mortal learns of it and judges it will he carry out the sentence. With Quint's written testimony, you can return to the Guardian, and now either condemn Karlat or Quint, or you can condemn neither. But remember that we read the book about summoning Belial. What if we followed those instructions? Because the castle has fire beetles, so you can get a fire beetle belly. And even if you don't know the spell Burning Hands, you will always find a wand of Burning Hands in a treasure chest in this castle. So we head to the summoning room, put a fire beetle in the brazier, and then use the Burning Hands wand, and Belial bursts forth. And I hope you cast Protection from Evil, because if you didn't, you're now fighting one of the most powerful demons in the game, and you will die. But thankfully, once again, there's even a Protection from Evil wand always found in a chest. The adventure has given you all the tools you need to see every possible ending. It's completely self-contained. So cast Protection from Evil on yourself, summon Belial, and now you can talk to him. And you learn a rather interesting truth. While Belial is not dead, he is also trapped here in the time stasis. He wants to leave to return to the Nine Hells, but he can't until someone passes judgment and Lathander's spell ends. But the most horrific revelation is the whole kidnapping children sacrifice ritual thing. That was never needed in the first place. Belial just thought that was funny and wanted to see if he could corrupt Karlat to do it. Now, you can actually ask Belial for a favor. He can either give you some experience, a powerful magical item, or his own written confession that he manipulated Karlat into his evil deeds. And if you do take the confession, you can absolve both brothers of guilt and condemn Belial in the eyes of the god Lathander. Now, from a mechanical min-maxing experience point of view, take the random magical item from Belial, sell it, and then condemn either of the brothers. Whatever you do, once you've passed judgment and leave, the time stasis spell is broken and the castle will have crumbled. The ghost of the mayor greets you and thanks you for freeing them from eternal torment. The village is deserted and destroyed, and the legend of Charwood will fade into memory. And from a role-playing point of view, just refuse to pass judgment and leave Karlat, Quint, and Belial trapped in a never-ending hell of their own making. This is a lovely little story, with combat, exploration, and choice. But what really elevates this, and impressed me, is you can try to kill Belial. There's just one problem with this. He's insanely powerful. Like, you're not meant to be able to kill him levels of powerful. But being a Dungeons & Dragons game, he does have health, and he can die. But his armor class is about 40, he absorbs so much physical damage from any physical attack, my flaming attack does nothing, and you can't even hit him unless you have a +3 quality weapon, which by this point in the game, you're just not meant to be able to have. So Belial is, at this point in your journey, functionally immortal. Unless you have the cleric henchman, who has a random chance of casting harm on him, which reduces his health to between 1 and 4 hit points. Then you score a lucky critical hit and kill him. But solo, you're not meant to be able to kill Belial. At least not yet. I spend a while here. I try again and again, and I can't hurt him. I think I do 2 damage from a lucky critical hit, but he's just impossible to kill. And remember, when you leave Chapter 2, you can't return, so there's just no way you'll be able to kill Belial with the power and the items you're meant to have access to by now. But remember, this is a creation kit. You can export your character and then import it to another saved game. So when I'm stronger, I'm going to return here with a later game character and see if I can kill Belial in a fair one-on-one fight. Now for my playthrough, Brother Hammerbane condemns Karlat. He contacted the demon, he accepted the deal, judgment is passed, the village crumbles. One of the best side quests in the whole game. And remember, we did meet the cultist in the village earlier, so we can now bring his journal to Arabeth. This third piece of evidence is enough. Aaron Gend pulls some strings and he gets us a pass into Luskan, but we are warned this is a one-way thing. We can get in, but getting out will be up to us. Finally, a lead. Time for revenge. We ask Arabeth if she's joining us, and she says she will, soon, but has other plans first, which seems strange because this is the one thing she's wanted. The road to Luskan is filled with bandits as usual, including these powerful dwarven cultists, but eventually we pass through the gates, and inside we see a man called Gregor being attacked by rogues. So we go to help out, and the rogues polymorph into giant rats. It seems Luskan has its own share of problems. We learn the city is dominated by the Tower of the Arcane Brotherhood, a society of powerful and secretive wizards, but the Brotherhood have elected 5 city captains to rule in their stead. The average person cannot visit the Arcane Tower. You need a seal of passage, and only the city captains have those. But rumors say that recently the Arcane Brotherhood Tower has seen some infighting, a bit of a power struggle. Strange cult members have been appearing, and the 5 city captains of Luskan have gone into civil war. 3 of them are now dead, and the remaining 2, High Captain Kurth and High Captain Baram, battle for dominance. Now, with the gates to Luskan being closed, the Neverwinter Plague has indeed been kept out, but this has also kept out reinforcements, medicine, and food. The people are starving, and the High Captains seem to have gained an unnatural amount of power and influence in a very short amount of time. We chat to the locals in the tavern to get a grip on the situation. This lady Londa says Baram invaded her home, killed her husband, and then took her 9 children hostage. She begs us to help and says Baram made his base in the sewers. And then on the other side of the tavern we meet Elwind, whose sister is being held captive by High Captain Kurth. He says he's already paid the ransom that Kurth demands, but refuses to release her. Right, so we now have a reason to hate both these captains. And we also need to get into the Arcane Brotherhood Tower, which means we need a seal of passage, so one of them has to die. Killing a captain is both a moral and mechanical goal. I explore Luskan and find the local pleasure house run by Bella. Now, soldiers of both captains gather here, and Bella tries to keep order, but she hates them as much as we do. She even tells us to keep our voice down and talk to the girls upstairs. Now, the girls here have their own problems with the captains. Yvette says she had a child with Galron, a wealthy but cruel man who then took the baby away. She asks us to talk to Galron about being in the child's life somehow. And then Rain explains while Bella does what she can to protect the girls, both captains are essentially keeping the pleasure house captive, making cruel demands of everyone. She says Kurth is based in the West Docks. His men sneak through a hole in the outer wall. And yes, Baram is in the sewers, but there is also a secret back entrance. So now we have motive, means, and opportunity. We set off. Navigating the slums isn't the easiest as the camera fights you in tight spaces, but we do find Galron, the wealthy man that Yvette mentioned. He says, I will keep the child so no one will find out I use the pleasure house, but then he is also willing to sell us the child for 250 gold. We make the deal and return the baby. Now, in a lovely roleplay touch, you can accept the quest reward of 250 gold, therefore ending at net neutral. You can refuse the quest reward, or you can offer 250 of your own gold to the mother to help the child have a better start in life. This is purely an in-character choice, so Brother Hammerbane offers some gold. We have more than enough by now. I head into the Temple of Tyr, here the recall and healing place. We meet Aaron Gend. It seems he made it into the city. We ask about Arabeth, and Aaron hasn't seen her recently. She did enter the city of Luskan, and then kind of went off by herself to do something. Aaron explains if we can bring him the seal of one of the captains, he can forge pass papers to get us into the tower. So I go find the hole in the wall and sneak through. Inside, we speak to a magical projection of Captain Kurth. He is impressed with us, even says we can join his crew if we go and kill Captain Baram. We deny his request and then fight across the bridge toward his base, reach cleric level 7 and gain the Hammer of the Gods smiting spell. We also learn greater magic weapon enhancement, which greatly increases my 2-hit bonus. I can also now summon a giant spider, but as powerful as Sir Spindles is, I still prefer Sir Fluffles. While hunting pirate captains down, I find a strange-looking statue outside a house. It says inside, 3 magical gates guard the treasure of Volaron the Damned. So of course I get distracted and head inside. I'm sure the 9 kidnapped kids will be fine. They can last a few more hours. Inside this house we find pirate corpses, so clearly we are not the first people hunting the treasure. We find a riddle talking about putting some kind of skull on a desk, so we kill a skeleton lord and then do that, and this opens the ruins of Ilusk, a multi-floor dungeon filled with enemies and traps. And each floor ends with fighting a mini-boss and then taking an item from that mini-boss and putting it into a pedestal to open the next door. It is very much the kind of adventure that a dungeon master would throw in if the whole group can't make it that week, but some players still turned up and you need to give them something to do without advancing the plot too much. It is purely mechanical, but it is fun. So we fight this fallen hero, and then a water elemental, and then Volaron himself and his summoned skeletal army. A little side quest, little loot, then back to the main plot. We find Captain Kurth's lair and, ominous red glow, and a load of goblins burning books. Nice bit of world building there. Now this mansion is filled with enemies, but it's beginning to feel a little eclectic, like they've just thrown more enemies into more rooms for the sake of padding out the combat encounters in the mansion. We kill some hellhounds, and then a few succubuses. We kick down a door and find Captain Kurth. He is joined by some high-level demons, including a magical Rakshasha. But demon might is no match for some flaming hot steel of magical justice. The blessing of St. Cavil burns true, and the demons go down. We kill everyone and take the captain's head as a trophy. We grab his magical amulet of passage, so we could go into the tower now, but I want to kill the other captain first. We even find the prison room and rescue the dude's trapped sister. And then while looting, I find a magical glowing orb. I've got no idea what it does, but it's glowy and orby, and that's probably important. There's even a side puzzle here. This portal will constantly produce enemies, but we find the diary of a young wizard. He says, here's designed a portal to summon demons, but it gets a bit out of hand, so he made a failsafe. Just throw in a smooth stone and a magical glowing orb and you can close the portal. See? I knew the glowy orb would come in handy. So we shut the portal down, then take the captain's head back to the tavern and let everyone know Kurth is no more. On to Captain Baram next. He's in the sewers. And unfortunately, you can tell that Baram is voiced by Cam Clark, putting on possibly the worst Irish accent ever.
Hi, Captain of Luskan. You'll have to excuse me for speaking to you through an illusion.
Baram's mercenaries all take these polymorph potions and turn into rats when fighting, refilling their health and giving them increased defense, so fights here are again slow going. Now I thought maybe this would be explored, maybe it's a sewer connection, maybe a rat-themed gang, but nope, they just decided to do this. Deeper in, we fight a Yuan-Ti necromancer, and I like this because a Yuan-Ti was one of the Water Davian bosses in Chapter 1. Here it's just a regular enemy, so there's a feeling of power and progression. You have a direct comparison to how strong you were. Even deeper in the sewers, there's another summoning ritual, and that's demonic forces connected to both of these captains. So we smash a few summoning altars up and finally find Baram. He's supported by a priestess of Mask, a powerful caster. Taking her out first is important. But then Baram, my god, this guy is a tank. Actually, he really is a tank, because he's got a damage-absorbing shield, and once it's depleted, he just recasts it infinitely. So how do I kill him? Well, it seems these gargoyle statues are actually the things casting the shield, so smash them up, and then Baram folds like a cheap suit. We loot his place, take his head, and now we need to rescue the 9 children and return a hero. So we look around, and down here we find a giant spider's lair, and after doing some pest control, we find a nanny wrapped in a cocoon, and she says Baram took the 9 children, transformed the older ones into demons, and threw the younger ones to the hellhounds as food, and they are all incredibly dead. Right. That's not the heroic rescue I was hoping for. This will not be the easiest news to break to Londa. But in a nice role-playing touch, when you do report your horrific finding, You can choose to lie and say the kids are fine, they've just been taken to an orphanage, but you'll never see them again, but they are definitely fine. Now, a comforting lie is probably the best choice in this already bleak situation. Londa thanks you and gives you the key to her husband's secret weapon cache in the sewers, and she then leaves the bar, strong and filled with determination. Maybe she's going to be okay after all. So I follow her on out, and then she runs straight into a Black Knife assassin ambush and just gets straight up murdered. Rip Londa. At least you can go and see your children now. Man, this city is brutal. So I go back to the sewers to find the husband's secret weapon stash, and here I find one of the strangest items in the game, an item called Miscellaneous Medium. And the item description is, there are many unusual items in this game. This is one of them. And this is the only item I found to break the fourth wall, directly referring to this as a game. All the other descriptions are in-universe stories. Why is the fourth wall broken here? With both captains dead, we give Aringend the marks of passage, and he forges us some Arcane Brotherhood Tower documents to say that we are an ambassador. So we head on over, show these to the guard, and he says, okay, be careful, there's lots of fighting, it's a bit crazy in there. So we head on inside and meet Yanasha, an ambassador of the Elk tribe. She says she's been summoned here by the new Archmage, a powerful wizard called Morgrim. And we know that name. Morgrim's the one that's been organizing the Cult of the Eye to search for the artifacts. And then another ambassador, this time to the Orcs. They say Morgrim is planning on assembling an army of pirates, orcs, and loyal humans. For what purpose? We don't yet know. In another room, we find a book explaining how to travel around the tower. Seems you need a runestone of the floor you want to travel to, and these runestones are just scattered around. But the strangest thing about this letter is it is directly addressed to Lady Arabeth de Tilmarand. Why is Arabeth here? Well, this is answered pretty quickly when we find her journal. Arabeth, no matter how hard she tried, could not get the image of her love Fenthig being hanged out of her mind. It wasn't just or fair, it was a city demanding vengeance against a trusting, naive young man. And her love for Neverwinter has turned to hatred of its warped sense of justice. So when Morgrim offered Arabeth the power to seek revenge against those she believed wronged her, she agreed to at least meet him. And we learn that Morgrim, Arabeth, and whatever thing Morgrim serves are at the very top of this tower. This means fighting through 8 floors of increasingly tough enemies. You need to find the key for the next floor on each floor, and this whole section, if you're being thorough, takes about an hour and a half, and unfortunately, because of the amount of loot this tower drops, it really drives home the issues with removing the party system in a Dungeons & Dragons game. There's a lot of freedom in Neverwinter Nights to build how you like from a lot of classes. But what you will notice is once you've gained a few levels and put points into a few things, you've pretty much narrowed down your potential future choices unless you want to really harm your own build. And by level 10, you're probably hyper-focused on the kind of game that you want. Now, it's like saying there are thousands of solutions to a maze, but once you've taken the first few turns, you're locked into the next several hundred, and any other choice is objectively wrong. The problem with this is you do still get a load of drops, weapons, armor, spells that you can't use, and because you can't equip them to your henchmen, your only choice is to sell them. I'm gaining an insignificant amount of experience for every non-boss fight, so the only real reward for combat is whatever item I get at the end of it, which is almost never usable. All these rare named items, they can't be saved for another character, they're just being sold. The only use they would have is being traded to a friend. The depth of this game is only really visible in multiplayer. The single controllable character gameplay means most of the stuff you find, you can't use. And I think there's a reason that Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 used a party system, and then Neverwinter Nights 2 went back to using the party system. We know this game's strength is as a creation kit for multiplayer experiences because of the design scope and the teamwork aspect of Dungeons & Dragons. So it's a baffling design choice when I'm halfway into this game that they didn't let a single player make a team. Now, I'm not saying that Neverwinter Nights is a bad overall experience, but it's almost as if the Wailing Death campaign, something that was made to show off the strengths of this game, didn't focus on the strengths of this game. Ascend through all the floors of the tower, fighting through an endless stream of summoned imps. We find a golem control facility and put 2 control rods into a box, and this summons a helmed horror to help us, but only for a single floor. Then I win a duel against a Brotherhood wizard, and just before we crush his stupid wizard face, he begs us to spare him and explains that recently Morgrim took over and is forcing them all to create an army of various creatures against their will, imps, golems, and more. He says Morgrim serves a strange otherworldly queen. She plans to invade the planet, but first Morgrim must find a source of immense power buried in the heart of Neverwinter. Interesting. Reach floor 6 and unstoppable force meet immovable object. We take on this battle horror. It cannot hit us unless it scores a critical. We cannot hit it unless we score a critical, and killing it is absolutely not worth the time it took me to do. In this room we meet Nephthys, an imprisoned nymph. She begs us to free her, and I mean, yeah, sure, I can't see this going wrong in any way. Go on, you little scamp, be free. Then on the next floor, a cameo that I wasn't expecting. We meet and fight the wizard Valindra Shadowmantle, a named character in Dungeons & Dragons lore. Valindra grew up a moon elf and then worked for the Arcane Brotherhood. Eventually she becomes a powerful lich and even then works for Zas Tam, a red wizard of Thay who appeared in the Honor Among Thieves Dungeons & Dragons film. But I know the name Valindra Shadowmantle from the MMORPG Neverwinter, where she is the antagonist of the second expansion module, Shadowmantle. I played Neverwinter a lot back in the day. In fact, some of my earliest YouTube videos are guides to the dungeons in Neverwinter Online. So we kill Valindra and loot the Harp of Pandemonium, the first bard weapon I found, and again, something I can't use. We take down the head Minotaur jailer and he drops a pinnacle stone, meaning we can now reach the top. He also drops a katana +2. Now, katanas are considered some of the best weapons in the game. 3rd edition doesn't necessarily have a best weapon, but the katana will score a critical hit on a roll of a 19 or a 20, so you're effectively doubling your critical hit roll range. But we're not called Senpai Weebbacker, we're Brother Hammerbane, so we are sticking to the hammer. The tower even has some jail cells where you can free some wizards who refuse to serve Morgrim, including this guy, who has gone mad, and is talking to Fred, a hay bale and bucket on a stick. Take on a room full of twisted demons, and through the power of quick saving and quick loading, we find the Hammer of Justice in this chest, a hammer with bonus damage against anything chaotically aligned. Finally, we ascend to the pinnacle, and then we meet Arclem, the previous head wizard of the tower. He says Morgrim forcefully took power, and Arclem, on the advice of his nymph advisor Nymphitis, turned himself into a lich to gain the power needed to fight back. However, that didn't really work, and now he's trapped here. Lots of people turning themselves into liches for power in this game. Arclem tells us that Morgrim is working for Dread Queen Morag, the reptilian queen of the Old Ones. Morag is attempting to return to this reality, and to do that, she needs the 4 words of power, ancient stone tablets which, when gathered, will do something powerful and probably bad. He explains these words of power are all hidden in strange magical places. Now, we actually know the cult already have one of these words of power. Remember the wood spirit and the spirit realm? Well, the spirit told us that while it was poisoned, the cult dug up a magical stone from its roots and then teleported away. That's one of them. Now, Arclem knows that we can't kill him. He even offered to let us try, and we give it a good go, and yeah, he's right, you can't kill him. But you can free him by breaking the 4 magical braziers around the room. And while doing this, Arclem tells us slightly more. It seems Dread Queen Morag created the plague and used her cult, the People of the Eye, to spread it, because every death caused by the plague restores her power and will help her return to our reality. So her plan is twofold. First, use Morgrim to recover the 4 words of power so she can use those for whatever she needs, and second, cause as much death and destruction as she can through spreading the plague. Now we know what kind of scale of threat we face. We finally run onto the rooftop and go and confront Morgrim, Arabeth, and Dread Queen Morag. So Arabeth de Tilmarand, hero of the people, has fallen to vengeance, renounced her paladin ways and become a blackguard of Morag, agreeing to lead those dark armies against the people of Neverwinter just to avenge Fenthic. With this, Morag, Morgrim, and Arabeth teleport away, and we're left to deal with a load of powerful creator lizard people, archers, fighters, and mages. I just about survived, the bonus damage from the Hammer of Justice really coming in clutch. And remember, these are weakened lizard people, not the full might of the creator race. But we survive the assault and descend into Morgrim's Archmage chambers. We find his diary explaining Dread Queen Morag needs the 4 words of power and the power they unlock to leave her magical prison and walk the world at full strength once more. With the tower cleared and Arabeth gone, we return to the city and, with a heavy heart, report all of this to Arin Gend. On to Chapter 3. Arabeth is leading a dark army across the land heading to Neverwinter, but this is just a distraction because rumours are the 3 remaining words of power are somewhere around the northern village of Beorunna's Well, so we are sent there to find them before Morgrim does. You start in Arin Gend's shack and all the mercenaries are just lined up. Now my first reaction to this is what an incredibly lazy way to present that. No character, just purely mechanical. So we head to the outside world and right, the village of Beorunna's Well looks exactly the same as Port Last. Same tile set, same buildings, same overall vibe. And we have Coldwood to the north, Moonwood to the east, and Fort Ilkard to the south. 3 directions to leave the hub town. 3 MacGuffins to find. We ask around the locals and find that some people need some quests doing, and oh my god, it really is routine by now. It's the same design as the first 2 chapters. In fact, there's only one major difference. We've had dungeons, yes, but this is the chapter they remembered, oh damn, we should probably add some dragons, and my god, do they add a lot. Chapter 3 does, however, bring the most significant upgrade. I find a Warhammer +3 for sale, which is better than my Hammer of Justice, and then we find the Boots of Haste. And we are now permanently under the effect of the Haste spell, meaning increased movement speed, an extra attack per round, and increased dodge. That is massive. So we might as well start our search for the words of power to the north. In Coldwood, we meet Elven Scout Delvar. They know who we are because of our fame, and they even say there's an inert magical portal to the north, but he couldn't activate it. Just be careful, it's surrounded by orcs. And you know what? He's not wrong. There are orcs aplenty, but the constant haste effect combined with my new hammer is just shredding enemies, and my armor class is up to 32, so I'm tanking most attacks. Just be aware the recall portal fee has increased to 400 gold per use, so you can cheese the game with recalls, but it's going to get expensive. I do, however, have about 250,000 gold by now. Find some more cultists and some more diaries giving all glory to the return of the old ones, and a rather graphic description of what cultists do to other cultists if they leave or attempt to question Morag. And then we find the portal that the elf mentioned, and yep, he was correct, I can't seem to activate it. I'll come back here later. Now the woods are also filled with vampires and zombies, and some of them have mind control magic and keep stunning or paralyzing me, so I really need something that resists mind control. And eventually I find a vampire champion who says, "We will never enter Leyen's tomb." And, you know, I didn't want to enter Leyen's tomb, but now you've said I can't, I kind of do want to. So chapter 1 is pretty much Waterdavian creatures, go and find them. Oh no, it got worse. Chapter 2 is find 3 bits of evidence for the cult. Oh no, it got worse. Chapter 3 is find 3 words of power. I wonder if when we do find them, it will get worse. And this is just disappointingly uninspired. Everyone does say the base campaign is the worst that Neverwinter Nights has to offer, with the expansions being way better. And some say that the Mask of the Betrayer expansion for Neverwinter Nights 2 is one of the best D&D experiences ever made. So I will play those eventually and judge it all fairly, but there is no denying it, the base campaign is a real slog in Neverwinter Nights 1. The Vampire Tomb is full of, surprisingly, vampires, and then another puzzle fight which I like. Destroy the 4 glyph generators and the glyph golem dies. While looting this tomb, I find a Gem of Misery. That's a unique item. I wonder if I'll have to put it on or in something within this dungeon. But you know what? I can't complain, because in this dungeon we find a Ring of Protection +5, one of the best defensive items in the game. Push deeper in and find a trapped succubus. They were imprisoned long ago, and if we bring them their old jewelry, they'll help us out by opening doors. I mean, yeah, that saves me having to break all the doors down at least. So we find her jewelry, hand it in, and she calls us a fool for helping her and attacks us. In case of succubus attack, liberally apply Flaming Hammer to face. Who's the fool now? Eventually find 4 more strangely named gems and then this puzzle room. Each pillar has a little story attached to it and you have to match the gems with the story. The guard is dutiful, the princess is miserable, the king is honourable, and the prisoner is in pain. Putting all the gems in the correct places unlocks the central pillar and we get the Star Sapphire gem. What does this do? Don't know, but it's shiny, and shiny means useful. Fully explore the northern woods and can't find any sign of a word of power, at least not for now. So I ask around town, and the archaeologist Lillian Cambridge might be a possible lead. She's in the tavern, drunk and annoyed. Turns out a wizard called Nax stole her snow globe. Now I really like the character of Lillian. She's such a small character in the overall story, but a drunk, angry archaeologist has got more charm than most random NPCs, and her connected quest is one of the more imaginative ones. Lillian says the wizard Nax hides in a magical lab deep within the forest accessed by a portal. She gives us a magical scroll which will activate the portal, so let's go liberate a snow globe. Use the portal in the northern woods to access Nax's lab, and my god, it looks surprisingly similar to the Arcane Brotherhood Tower. They are really getting their money's worth from that tower interior tile set. Another nice environmental puzzle though. A diary tells us the story of a magical duel, with wizards summoning creatures to attack each other. The first wizard summons a cat, the second responds with a dog. The first then summons a bear, and the second responds with a dragon, which then eats everyone. Now this story isn't just a silly story. It matters because later there is a room with 4 gongs, and the examined text of each gong is an animal. So follow the story order: feline, canine, ursine, and then draconic. Doing this opens a secret room, and inside we find the snow globe. But this lab has another secret, one which if you do wrong, you can actually soft lock. The wizard Nax is here. He's locked in his own lab. He explains we need to summon a water elemental and ask it to free him, because the door is magically sealed. Now to do this, you must place some items in a box and then cast Melf's acid arrow on the box, similar to how you summoned Belial in the time-locked castle. And if you can't cast Melf's acid arrow, don't worry, you'll always find the Ring of Melf somewhere in this lab, which any class can use. Random D&D history fact: Melf is a famous Dungeons & Dragons character from the Greyhawk campaign setting, but the name Melf came from Gary Gygax not knowing what to call him, just knowing he was a male elf, and so wrote down M-Elf on the character sheet, and that just kind of stuck. So now for the soft lock. If you summon the water elemental before talking to Nax, the water elemental will give you a magical item, but the option "please free Nax" doesn't appear in the chat box, and if you take the item, you cannot summon the elemental again, leaving Nax trapped forever. But I mean, I only really need the snow globe, so I guess you can stay here a little while longer. We give the snow globe back to Lillian Cambridge, and she explains this is not a normal snow globe, for inside it is a miniature magical realm, and inside that realm, somewhere, is a word of power. She puts the snow globe on a pedestal in her tavern room and says, if we want to, we're welcome to magically teleport inside and try and find it. Now, when you interact with the snow globe, you can choose to go inside or spin the snow globe around. Now this will matter. We head on inside the miniature realm and we see absolutely no snow. One job, guys. One job. Clues in the name. Snow globe. This place looks like every other forest, and I don't need world-class photorealistic graphics. I just wanted maybe white trees, snow on the ground, a snowy vista, some ambience would be lovely. Anyway, inside the snow globe world, we find a small island occupied by 2 factions, dryads and dwarves, and they hate each other. Apparently, they've been at war for as long as either can remember, and whenever they die, they just magically come right back. So the fighting is endless. Now, in the original game, you could actually grind experience here forever, as they do respawn endlessly, but in the enhanced edition, the experience per kill has been reduced to 4, and I need thousands, so it's not worth my time. But even if you did want to grind, remember, the entire campaign is level scaled, so you don't need to. The story of the snow globe is actually quite interesting. The dwarves are all aggressive, but you can talk to the dryads, they're pretty chill. They have vague memories of a time before the Great War, when dryads and dwarves worked together, and these memories link to a cave in the center of the island. So we pop on over, and inside the cave we find 2 journals, one from the leader of the dryads and one from the leader of the dwarves, and the journals are identical. Neither side can remember the origin of this conflict, but both mention the Amulet of Ages, an ancient relic of unity between the tribes. We find this amulet in a chest in the cave, but it's broken. The cave does contain one more important thing, a giant evil ice dragon, but they're not aggressive. So we ask the dragon about the word of power, and he says, yep, got it right here. I use its magical power to maintain this little reality of mine because I enjoy the constant fighting of dwarves and dryads. It entertains me. I mean, at least they're honest with us. They won't give us the word of power, but they also won't kill us, and we're of little consequence to them. As long as the dwarves and dryads never unite, this demigod ice dragon is essentially immortal. So we take the broken Amulet of Ages back to the dryad leader, and they do kind of remember it. It shows a hammer and a leaf intertwined, but it's broken. Only the dwarves could fix it, but they're aggressive, we can't talk to them. So leave the snow globe world via the little portal and give the globe a shake, and then head back inside. And the world is exactly the same, except now the dryads are aggressive and the dwarves are reasonable. Speak to the dwarven leader and he agrees to fix the amulet, but even when repaired, it's lost its magical essence. Okay, fine, leave again, shake the globe again, back inside again, take the fixed amulet to the friendly dryads, and they imbue it with magic. Turns out it's an amulet of resist cold. Convenient that, with the defense against ice provided by the fixed Amulet of Ages, return to the central cave and attack the ice dragon. Now it's a long fight, mostly because the dragon casts fear on you, making you run away randomly, but in a rather fantastic stroke of luck, while out of my control, Brother Hammerbane randomly runs through the cave doorway, putting us out of reach of the dragon's attack. And when the spell wears off, we just hammer him into the ground. With the dragon dead, we can loot the hoard and find the Word of Power. But the moment we do, an Ancient One appears, a creator lizard person, and I get ready for a fight. This is Hedraline. I say I'm not scared of you. I'm going to collect all the words of power, thwart Morag's plans, and then kill Morgrim. And Hedraline says, good. She is also an enemy of Morag. She explains, Dread Queen Morag didn't just corrupt and subjugate other, lesser races, but also some of the creator race as well, using the power of the words to create what Morag referred to as the word slaves. Hedraline is one of the word slaves and says that for now, as long as Morag is not in power, she is able to help us. With this, she disappears. So we leave the snow globe and report to Arengend. One word of power found. That was another brilliant use of the Neverwinter Nights dungeon system. A small, focused, tightly written adventure with an interesting mechanic. So with the northern forest done, time to go west. More forest, more caves, more orcs. And then a gate with an orc head on a spike, and a warning saying this is what happens to orcs when they stray into drow territory. So now we've got drow. That's pretty cool. So we kill all the orcs in this cave and find a note on the main orc door saying he's out, but will be back later. I mean, he's going to return to a lot of dead orcs, explore more, and I like how these mountain giants throw rocks at you. Lovely animation. Also, the damage from the ranged rock attack is unavoidable, but a successful block does halve the damage taken. Deeper in the woods, we find a tribe of Uthgard barbarians, a people who have joined the Neverwinter Lord's alliance and stand with us against the armies of Arabeth and the Cult of the Eye. They're injured, so we heal them briefly, and then head deeper into the western forest, toward another cave. And inside this one, another dragon. A green dragon this time. This is a Culatrax. She's peaceful enough and says she doesn't have a word of power, but she does have a hoard of treasure, and she'd be willing to share it with us if we do her a favor. You see, recently some hill giants have started raiding her nest, stealing her eggs. She doesn't know why, but if we bring her the head of the hill giant leader, she will reward us. She says the hill giant cave is to the west of hers. So off we go hill giant hunting. The cave is pretty close by, and inside we find the most ornate door so far, this big circular thing. Now the hill giant and ogre cave really lives up to its name by being absolutely rampacked with both hill giants and ogres. I use the save load loot trick to snag myself a snazzy helmet which prevents mind control effects, so now I am almost immune to everything. And in the back of the cave we find not a hill giant, but a more powerful fire giant. So we fight and win, and on the body of the fire giant find a note. It seems this fire giant was an envoy, and he was sent by the mighty Clouth, It says Clouth demands tribute of dragon eggs, and if the hill giants do not bring them to his lair in the mountains, the fire giants will destroy all of the hill giants. Deeper in still, we do find the hill giant chief. We kill him and take his head for the green dragon Akulatrax, and we find another note on his body, handwritten by the hill giant himself, saying, okay, the hill giants will steal eggs as tribute for Clouth, but only if I get to be the leader. We free some prisoners while we're here because we're a nice person, and then deliver the hill giant head to the green dragon. She gives us some treasure, but our only lead now is, who is Clouth, and why does he demand dragon eggs as tribute? We know he's in the nearby mountains, so let's go and have a chat. We fight further west onto the Spine of the World, a very cool name for a mountain range, kill some cultists, and then find a journal on the leader saying they have been tasked with stealing a word of power from the red dragon Clouth. And in another nearby cave, we meet the gold dragon Gorgotha, and she says, yep, she knows Clouth. He is indeed a red dragon, and he does indeed have a word of power. Also, he's been trying to steal her eggs. And if we were to go and kill Clouth, Gorgotha would be in our debt. So once again, plot lines have collided. Dragons want our help, and we want the word of power. Guess we're going into Clouth's mountain lair. The red dragon has teamed up with some local fire giants and the evil dark dwarves, the Duragar. And finally, a new tile set, the fire giant's lair, and it's pretty damn nice. Lava, spikes, glowing heat lines, metal grates, walkways. This is cool, but it's a bit odd that they're still using the basic wooden cabinet asset as a main treasure chest. This does not fit the decor at all. Deep in the lava castle, we free some prisoners and learn about the strange things Clouth has been doing. It seems that he's been using Yuan-Ti sorceresses to magically grow dragon eggs into fully formed dragons extra fast in months instead of the usual centuries. The problem with this is, this does mature the dragon physically, but not mentally. So Clouth now has a stockpile of fully grown, but still mentally baby dragons. What does he need this for? Now, finding out will actually take quite a while because this place is huge and takes me over an hour and a half to fight through, even while hasted and buffed. But eventually, we find Skrog, king of the fire giants, servant of Clouth. Skrog is not willing to talk to us, so we kill him and find some more books explaining a magical process, detailing how you can use a magical glass orb to capture the essence of a sacrificed dragon. And then you can feed on that essence later. Now, the older a dragon, the more sustenance it will provide. But the younger the mind of a dragon, the better the taste of the essence. So Clouth is essentially growing his own tasty, filling snacks by speed-growing dragons, capturing their essence in a sacrificial orb, and then just eating them. The book does warn us, however, whatever you do, do not try to capture the essence of a dead dragon, because that will make the orb poisonous. That's good to know. Further in this fire giant lair, we find the kitchen. A blue dragon sleeps peacefully, fully grown, but still a baby. And a nearby altar awaits an orb for the sacrifice. Now, we could kill this blue dragon and then capture its dead essence to create a poison orb, and then feed that to Clouth if we find him later. But I don't want to kill the baby blue dragon. He's done nothing wrong. We will find another way. And deeper in the lair, across this heavily trapped bridge, we finally meet him. The red dragon Clouth. He does not see us as a threat. No dragon does. He even happily admits, yeah, he's got a word of power. And he'll give it to us if we like. He just wants one small favor. Bring him the eggs of Gorgotha, the gold dragon. He needs them to continue extending his life through his magical dragon growing project. Clouth even tells us, yeah, he knows about Morgrim as well. Knows about the hunt for the words of power. He thinks Morgrim is a fool. Even with the words of power, he would never be able to control Morag. So now we're stuck in a rather interesting position. We can steal Gorgotha's eggs and deliver them to Clouth, or we can kill the baby adult blue dragon, capture the dead essence and feed it to Clouth, substantially weakening him, or, bear with me here, we could attempt to kill Clouth while he's at full strength. And this is a terrible idea, because he's got a super high armor class, resists almost all spells, and has a ton of health and will breathe fire on you, hitting you for around 100 points of damage, and I've only got 130 health. In fact, if you examine him, Clouth's challenge rating is impossible. But Brother Hammerbane is not a quitter, so let's do this. The first plan of all-out assault did not work. Second plan. I can cast the magical sonic warding glyph. This is a magical trap that harms anyone that walks over it. So let's set one on the bridge and lure Clouth over it. Actually, no, let's set 22 on the bridge and lure Clouth over all of them. This has to kill him. Well, it turns out he can resist a few spells and, oh, no, actually he can resist all of them. He's resistant to the damage from every single one. Okay, next plan. How about just regular traps? I buy a trap kit from the shady merchant in town, and it turns out I don't know how to set traps, so that plan is also out the window. Right, final Hail Mary plan. Buff up with absolutely everything. Potions, spells, abilities, get my attack and damage as high as I possibly can, even if only for a few seconds. Run in, hit him, then use the Stone of Recall to escape. Rebuff and do this as many times as I need to. And amazingly, with potions, my War Domain Cleric buff, my Divine Combat spell, my Enhanced Hammer, I do hit him. Only for a little bit of damage, but I do hit him. So I teleport in and out a few times, but then we run into an issue. I return and he's gone. Has he despawned? Oh, wait, no, there he is, on the bridge, trapped between two giant stone gates. And as I can't break the gates down or open them, I've now softlocked myself. Fantastic. Right, reload. New plan. Lure Clouth all the way across the bridge to the steps. Then use the hidden run technique using the door strats, heading up and down these steps every time, resting outside the room, and amazingly, this starts to work. All I have to do is hope he doesn't figure out how to use steps, and oh no, he's figured out how to use steps. So I run away, and this map is a giant loop with some gates along the way, so I close them back up, and Clouth is a civilized dragon who respects how gates work and kindly just stands there, letting me rest, rebuff, and then get 1 or 2 hits in before running away. Now this whole process takes about 25 minutes, but eventually I do manage to kill Clouth without poisoning him and without giving him Gorgotha's eggs. And then we loot his treasure, taking the second word of power. And when we do, Hedraline the good lizard shows up again. She says Morgrim has no idea what he's doing, and Morag is way more powerful than anyone thinks. She's bloodthirsty, she's power hungry. You see, Morag's plan is to use the words of power to open a magical realm called the Source Stone. And if that happens, we'll all be in trouble. Now also in Clouth's treasure pile is the red dragon armor and the Dragon Slayer sword. Both incredibly powerful items, which might come in handy if we need to fight more dragons. So we bring the second word of power back to Aringend and then give Clouth's head to Gorgotha as a symbol of friendship, and she gives us a belt which makes us immune to death magic. Fantastic, no more instant deaths. So with a word of power found to the north and the west, it's time to head south to Fort Ilkard, see what's going on down there. Seems the fort is under attack by the Elk tribe, a mountainous tribe loyal to Morgrim. We actually met their ambassador back in the host tower. The Fort Ilkard commander asks us to destroy the Elk tribe catapults currently raining fire down on them. And this is quite strange. You cannot harm the catapult until the crew have been killed. But once they are killed, you don't attack the catapult. Like every other object in the game, you just have to left click onto it and it breaks. So we break all 6, and the fort captain says, hey, if you've got time, why don't you go and kill the elk leader Zokham Thunderhammer? And yeah, sure, I'm not doing anything important, why not? So we find the enemy camp, run inside, and just start killing, really. But then we find some prisoners who say, actually, the leader is a reasonable man, and the elk people have somehow come down with the plague despite being really careful, and they're just looking for a cure. Ooh. Some moral ambiguity. There's also quite a nice puzzle here about finding 3 books about 3 different things and putting them back into these 3 bookcases to unlock treasure. Nice mini quest. So we meet the elk leader, and unfortunately he's not up for talking, so we fight, kill him, and decapitate him, bringing his head back to the fort captain, because we're the good guys. But then we learn that actually the fort captain supplied the elk tribe with plague-infested blankets to wipe them out via biological warfare. That, my friend, is a war crime. Well, we asked the captain about the words of power, and he says, nope, not got any, but he does know the magical ruins to the south have a lot of strange artifacts. We should look there. So we head on south to the magical lake, and the reflections of the magical lights on the water is actually gorgeous. That still holds up today graphically. There's an altar here, which seems to keep summoning devils, so I dismantle it in the only way I know how, smashing it with a hammer, and then I find the entrance to the magical ruins. Head on inside, and ooh, these are more creator ruins. Now this ruin is again another self-contained but actually quite nice little story beat. Just inside we find a note on a dead adventurer saying the defensive golems are literally utterly indestructible. They were built 10,000 years ago and they are flawless. Nothing can hurt them. But the wizard in the garden may know something useful. So we fight inside and see a temporal apparition of a long-dead slave and some ancient creator lizard ghosts. It seems this temple was built around 10,000 years ago to house a word of power, and it's probably still here. But the golems and the complex riddles keeping it locked away means we can't get through. The answers are lost to time. But out in the garden, we meet Zafira. She is a time traveler. She explains time travel in the land of Farron works in a very specific way. You can go backwards or forwards, but only to specific points within very small regions, and this ruin just happens to be one of those points. So she asks us to use the magical sundial inside and some time crystals that she's about to give us to travel 10,000 years into the past and plant a seed so she, in the present, can study the resulting tree. Just don't do anything else in the past, or that will change the present. Okay, cool. Butterfly effect. Got it. So we use the time crystals and travel 10,000 years into the past, and we're told that because of time magic, we now can't leave the temple. Convenient, that. And now for the interesting touch. 10,000 years ago, the creator race was still thriving, still subjugating humans, and this temple was being built to house the word of power. So we can see all the slaves building it, and the weaker creator warriors that are guarding it. We can also go and look at all of the riddle traps as they're being made, and even find construction notes about how to solve them. Like how the fairy will guide you through the riddle of sound by showing you the correct order to interact with the gongs, or the riddle of light involves casting 2 coloured stones into the central pools and then adding the resulting coloured stone into the third pool, or the riddle of smoke where you mix 2 powders together to create strange gemstone colours. But most importantly, we meet Lokar, leader of the human slaves currently building the golems for the creator race. He says he is working directly for Morag, the Dread Princess. We tell him we're from the future and we're actually trying to kill Morag, but we need him to do us a favour. Make the golems a little bit worse. Add a flaw into them so we can kill them in the future. He agrees, and with his blessing, we go and find the 3 slaves currently building the golems and say, hey, can you make them vulnerable to blunt weapons? And the slaves, seeing that we have Lokar's blessing, agrees. So with the weaknesses added, we just need to plant the seed for Zafira. But outside in the garden, we run into Morag. She's still a princess at this point in time, and is stunned that a slave race person would ever think of talking to her. You can even ask her about her motivations for why she's doing what she's doing, but she quickly realizes you are not a regular slave. She summons her elite guard and teleports away. The guard aren't that elite, and with the seed planted, we can use the sundial to return to our present. Check in with Zafira, and yep, the tree has grown strong. I guess it's time to see if our golem weakness worked. Quick note, you see this electrical, magical looking barrier in the doorway? I assume that you couldn't pass through that, or it would be deadly, or at least harmful. But no, none of those things. You can just walk through it perfectly fine. So we find one of the golems, and yes, the flaws from 10,000 years ago shine through, and they can now be killed with blunt weapons. And we know how to solve the riddles. So we pass the riddle of light by dropping the correct coloured pebbles into the correct ponds. Then we do the same for the riddle of sound, and just in case you forgot the fairy's pattern from 10,000 years ago, there is a rather difficult enemy, a Bodok boss in this room, who drops a bottled fairy. You can use the bottle on the floor and release a fairy who will then just fly the correct route, and you can follow her. If you struggled killing this Bodok, by the way, you very much need to build into resisting instant death effects. The final golem guards the riddle of smoke, and this is the most annoying. You need to take 2 coloured powders from the alchemist's table and combine them in this brazier. But even following the in-game hints, it's kind of cryptic as to what you need to do, so I just brute force every combination. Nothing happens if you get it wrong. With the riddles solved, the final door opens to the ruins treasure, but not so fast. A Baylor demon guards the altar. Thankfully, nowhere near as difficult to kill as Belial, so we take the demon down, open the final chest, and get the 3rd word of power. Taking it makes Hedreline appear again. She says, Neverwinter is under attack. Arabeth and Morgrim have reached the city, and the great assault has begun. We must return quickly before Morgrim reaches the Source Stone. And now the true plot is revealed. Thousands of years ago, after Morag ascended to the position of Dread Queen, she knew the planet would go through a destructive ice age, and it would likely kill the creator race, as they thrive in the jungle. So Morag used all of her magical power to create a subdimension, a demi-plane called the Source Stone, and she willingly imprisoned herself and her loyal creator lizards inside this Source Stone, knowing it would be found thousands of years later and then they could return to the world when the world was habitable. There are many entrances to the Source Stone in many realities, and one of them is underneath Neverwinter. But you require the 4 words of power to get in or out. But Morag placed a failsafe on the Source Stone. If anyone tampered with the entrance without knowing what this was, a great plague would be unleashed, and the deaths caused by the plague would feed Morag's magical energy. So when Morgrim was messing around with the Source Stone, not knowing what it did, he accidentally released the plague. The deaths of the first few plague victims provided Morag with the psychic energy that she needed to communicate with Morgrim, and she promised him endless power if he was loyal to her and helped bring about her return. So now we have 3 words of power and Morgrim has 1. He needs all 4 to release Morag from the Source Stone, which is in Neverwinter. So in my mind, bringing the words of power back to Neverwinter is the dumbest thing we could possibly do. If anything, we should be getting as far away as possible, but the city is in danger, so we let Aaron know we've found all 3 words of power, and then we go and save the city. Again. Back in Neverwinter, the final chapter begins. Lord Nasha Alagondar takes the 3 words of power from us and stores them safely in the dungeons of Castle Never. He also says be careful out there. He just captured a creator lizard walking around the streets mumbling about word slaves and words of power. She said her name was Hedraline. She's now in the dungeon. We explain she's been helping us, but he doesn't believe us. Either way, we go and have a word. So Hedraline has a plan, and it's pretty simple. We have 3 words of power. Morgrim and Arabeth clearly have the 4th. If we get the 4th and bring Hedraline all 4, she can use their power to seal the Source Stone forever, trapping Morag and her loyalists in it for all eternity. I mean, that plan just screams possible betrayal, but sure, we have no choice. Let's give all the words of power to Hedraline. So it ends where it began. Except now there are lovely flaming fireballs being catapulted over the city walls. The skybox is quite nice. The city as you know it from Chapter 1 is mostly destroyed. The Moonstone Mask Pleasure House is now a makeshift field hospital with the girls caring for the wounded guard soldiers. The old shops are mostly still here, selling the best items in the game, and as most of the districts are closed off, we can only go south toward the spearhead of the invasion. The gate guard warns us they have invincible war golems. The only way to take these things down is to find and kill the wizards controlling them. Okay, can do. You can visit the abandoned buildings just like in Chapter 1, but now they're full of Luskan soldiers under the command of Arabeth, and killing one gets you the attack plan. It seems Arabeth is issuing commands from a magical mini-realm called Morgrim's Sanctuary, an extraplanar domain accessed by a portal we can find to the southeast. The note says we'll know once we've found it when we spot the half-dragon Baylor demon guarding it. Sounds fun. We take down some catapult crews on the back streets to slow down the bombardment on the city, and then pop into a few buildings and we find the magical golem-controlling wizards. And I have to say, wizards, you've done a rather fast job of extensively remodeling the interior of this house to suit your summoning needs. Only a few hours ago this was a spacious family home. Now you've knocked the wall through and put in an altar complete with summoning pit. Very modern art. Inside another building, we meet Old Man Asgard. He tells us he used to be a smuggler, and the invading army don't know about the secret tunnels like the one in the bookcase to the back streets. He says you can use this to sneak behind a golem and get to its controlling wizard faster, so we do. You know, I'm getting quite good at demon hunting. Maybe this was Brother Hammerbane's true calling all along. Inside this building, I take down a rather powerful team of a warrior, an assassin, a cleric, and a wizard, and after the fight is done, I notice that book on the table. You can't interact with it, but the asset texture is higher quality than normal. So I zoom in a bit and yep, it's a bit of a dev in-joke. The book says BioWare Core on the cover, and this is a book on the spine. Level up, reach cleric level 9 and gain access to the 5th level spells, which is good because outside this building we find the half-dragon Baylor, and he has one tough fight, but the blessings of Saint Cavil shine on me this day and the Baylor goes down. This means we can step through the portal to Morgrim's Sanctuary, and the first person we meet is Fallen Paladin, Arabeth de Tilmarand. Now, if you exhausted Arabeth's dialogue in Chapter 2, you might have been given Arabeth's ring, a magical defensive ring, and a symbol of her loyalty to the city. And if you have that equipped and you talk calmly to her now, you can actually convince her to stop this bloody crusade, renounce Morag, and just leave. But if you don't have the ring, you're going to have to fight. And honestly, she's not as tough as you'd expect. She's not half as tough as the Baylor just outside. And after taking her to half health, she'll stop fighting and ask you why you are still loyal to Neverwinter, to a city without justice, to a city that condemned her beloved Fenthic to death. And you actually get another chance here to convince her to lay down arms. This is a persuasion roll, but if you fail, you've got to kill her. Now, taking Arabeth down is bittersweet because we've lost a friend, but you also do get her sword. It's pretty powerful, but it's only usable by lawful, evil paladins. And this is a really hard class to have, because paladins must be lawful good. The only way to do this in the original campaign is to take every evil choice in every quest until your paladin class falls into Blackguard. Pretty decent sword, though. With Arabeth dead, we press on and soon meet Morgrim himself. He says we're too late. The ritual has already begun. We don't need all the words of power. One was enough. Morag is returning, and we cannot stop her. Then, for good measure, he tries to kill us. Morgrim starts the fight by summoning 2 flesh golems, and if you kill him first, he will transfer his essence into one of them and effectively resurrect. So kill the golems first. Morgrim is pretty tough. He has a plethora of spells and can fully heal himself from almost dead to maximum health in seconds, but like any caster, he's limited by his spell slots. And the game is fair with this. So if you can survive the initial burst of damage and wear him down, it will come down to a slogging match. Now, he may have a high armor class and decent strength for a wizard, but he is no match for Brother Hammerbane, his magical flaming hammer and belief in St. Cavil. So after a few minutes of back and forth, our magical hammer turns Morgrim into strawberry jam. With this, we loot his sanctum and take the 4th and final word of power. We head back to Castle Never's dungeon and give all 4 words to Hedraline. But of course, there's one final problem. Turns out Morgrim was right. The ritual is too far along to stop. Even with the words of power, Hedraline cannot contain Morag within the Source Stone. She cannot close the door, and this means a final, desperate plan is made. We cannot close the door, but we can use the words of power to give ourselves the energy needed to go into the Source Stone and kill Morag while she's still inside, before she reaches maximum power. So buy whatever you need, head down into the caves beneath the Castle Never dungeon, and find the 4 magic pedestals. 3 of the words of power are already in place. Put the 4th one in, and the Source Stone is unlocked. In we go. The Source Stone is full of Old One warriors, creator lizard people, eagerly awaiting the moment they can finally be released back upon the world, and they are powerful. The warriors hit fast, the evokers have a conical area ice breath attack which can hit up to 40 and slow you down a lot. This is a lot of resting between fights, and then we bump into an assassin, a woman called Ashira, and she looks and sounds exactly like Arabeth, except she is from a different place, a place called Azala. She tells us she was sent into the Source Stone to stop Morag, an evil lizard queen who is threatening her world. Unfortunately, all of Ashira's comrades have been killed, and the magic that sent her here will soon draw her back to her home world. We explain that clearly we're from 2 different realities, but we're also trying to stop Morag, and with that, she gives us a magical amulet designed to protect against Morag herself. Ashira is then teleported away. So that's a pretty cool story beat. Morag, the Dread Queen, the Queen of the Old Ones, the Creator, is an inter-reality threat, because the Source Stone doesn't just have a doorway into our reality. Morag increased the chances of a power-hungry adventurer stumbling upon the Source Stone door by linking it to many places, so other heroes from other existences are all attempting to stop her. And you can actually find the doorways to those other realms on your path. Huge wooden magical doors which can't be opened. This one leading to a green tower in the center of a great sea. This one leading to tall trees in a magical forest. This one leading to a reality so strange you cannot even begin to comprehend it without going mad. Another saying you can see winged creatures falling from the mouths of giant monsters walking across the land. So we're not the only reality threatened by Morag or the only hero trying to stop her. We've just got the furthest. We take down the Lizard Man Chieftain, careful as he can hit 60 damage in 1 round, which means I'm only ever 2 rounds from being completely dead. Health potions really coming in clutch here. But with him taken down, we can take another portal even deeper in. Wonder where this goes to. Right, this goes to a fight, if you're not prepared or built properly, that you'll really struggle with. You now have to fight 2 dragons at the same time. A corrupted copper and a corrupted silver, doing acid damage and electrical damage. But remember the magic amulet that Assassin Ashira gave us? That resists 25% acid and electric. So this fight is tough, and while I can go toe-to-toe with them both for a round or 2, doing a decent amount of damage, I still need to retreat constantly, heal myself up, buff up, and then run back in. Now you can use the Stone of Recall here, but I'm able through careful spell use to take one of them down, and then when it's one-on-one, I can rely on the power of belief, the blessing of St. Cavil, and the fact that I bought 30 cure critical wound potions before coming down here, and kill the second dragon. We take the 2 keys on their corpses and unlock the 2 doors the dragons were guarding. Deeper still, we see a projection of Morag rallying her troops, readying them for their imminent return to the surface world of Farron. We crash this party and just start swinging. Make sure to kill the cleric first or they'll keep resurrecting the others. And now, the final room, Morag's Sanctum. We speak to a projection of the Dread Queen. She's impressed, but also incredibly annoyed at the damage we've done to her crusade, and she sends her 2 personal guards, Morag's Hands, at us. These guys are actually tougher than the 2 dragons, so run away and rest up. Okay, seems you can't rest here. Not a problem, just Stone of Recall away and... Oh, right, you can't recall. Bugger. So I hope you didn't waste all your spells or items, and I hope you're on high health, because the only way to leave here is to win or die. Now remember that dying does just send you back to the Temple of Tyr, but you lose experience and gold. So let's do this. Try and separate the 2 bodyguards so you're taking them on one at a time. One of them attacks really quickly but has low to hit bonuses. One of them attacks slower but will always hit you. So stay healed and smash some sense into them. They drop their weapons when you kill them. A pair of powerful short swords and a powerful flame-imbued great axe. And with the guards dead, we can finally take on Morag. Just one problem. She's immune to everything. But we can solve this. See that altar behind her with all those praying lizards? Each of those is a single ward protecting her from something. They're named what they do. So if we kill the ward of crushing and the ward of fire, she'll now be weak to our hammer and flaming enhancement. Just be aware, while fighting, she will summon powerful minions, an AoE attack, and her super secret move, Morag knows Time Stop. Considered one of the most powerful spells in the canon of any Dungeons & Dragons setting, the ability to stop time is massively overpowered, and you'll know it's happened to you because your character portrait changes to a clockwork icon. Now, this could be devastating, but thankfully, she keeps trying to use the Time Stop to mind control me, but my helmet is preventing it. So it's all come down to this. Brother Hammerbane, the hero of Neverwinter, standing toe-to-toe with Morag, the creator, the Dread Queen, the enslaver of worlds, and with a final battle cry to Saint Cavil, we bring the Warhammer down and crush her lizard skull. With Morag lying dead at our feet, the Source Stone demiplane begins to collapse in on itself, so we leap into one of the newly formed portals and arrive in the Astral Plane. It seems Hedreline used the last of her power to make sure we got home safely. Once you have left the Astral Plane, the original campaign, The Wailing Death, is complete. Now, there are a load more adventures in Neverwinter Nights, from the 2 official expansion packs to the multiple modules, to an absolute plethora of player-made content, and most of this stuff is considered superior to the base game. There are even persistent online worlds still going after years. And I'll probably go and try a few of them, but for now there's one more thing to do in the original campaign. When you finish the game, your character data is automatically exported, so you could start a new game with that same character. But what if we start on Chapter 2 and speedrun the Charwood quest to get back to the summoning chamber of Belial? So now we can see how much we've grown. I re-summon the demon and oh my god, he is going down so fast. I don't even need to heal. Belial just gets crushed under the righteous fury of Brother Hammerbane, servant of Saint Cavil. And now we are done. So with the Wailing Death campaign done, we can finally answer the question, Neverwinter Nights, was it actually any good? Actually, after thinking about it, I can't answer that. Having played the Wailing Death campaign, all I can answer is, was the Wailing Death campaign any good? And the answer to that is, kind of. Overall, the plot was fine, but 3 chapters essentially being fetch quests with the Find 4 MacGuffins mechanic used for 80% of the game's runtime got real old real fast. But there were moments, like the Charwood time-locked mansion, or the Creator Dungeon time travel puzzle solution, or the Snow Globe reality, where the game seemed to come alive and focus on the strengths of Dungeons & Dragons. Fantastical, absurdist, fun adventures. And I think that's because Neverwinter Nights is an incredible toolkit for making fun Dungeons & Dragons adventures. It's versatile, it's powerful. But the Wailing Death campaign just isn't it. It's filled with so much padding, repetitive combat, identical quests, NPCs you'll talk to once and never care about or invest in their own story. I don't think the Wailing Death is a good example of what Neverwinter Nights is, and everyone seems to agree with that. And I think if I judged it off this experience, I'd be ranking it off the worst adventure. And I think BioWare knew that as well. Because the expansion pack, Shadow of Udrentide, isn't a sequel to the main quest. It's an entirely separate quest which runs concurrently with the Wailing Death storyline. You play as a different character. And then the next expansion, Hordes of the Underdark, is a continuation of that storyline. So I guess I can't fully answer the question until I've played those as well. So I guess we're off to the small village of Hilltop, in the Silver Marshes, where Sister Silverquill, a timid and kind-hearted wizard in training, studies under her mentor, Drogon Dragonson. But that is a tale for another time, one of many, and only when all the tales are told will I finally be able to fairly answer the question, Neverwinter Nights, is it actually any good? Cheers for watching. Another massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep this channel alive and allow me to make long-form videos like this. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and our Discord. And as always, have a great day.